is the hour. We have quorum. Thank you, Councillor Whitehead, for coming back from vacation. I know, you were wonderful. Thank you so much. We'll remember that. Madam Clerk, well, first off, I'll call Planning Committee meeting to order, and members of the public are advised our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and temporarily archived on the city's website. Other individuals in the media may also be audibly and or visually recording this meeting. As well, a reminder, please, that all electronic devices are to be switched to non-audible during the meeting. And please note, delegations not speaking at a public meeting have a 5-minute speaking rule. Madam Clerk, good morning again. Are there any changes to today's agenda?
Yes, Madam Clerk, there are changes for item 8.2, the public meeting for 121 Fiddler's Green. We have an added written submission from Rosemary Morris. For item 8.3, the public meeting for 574 Northcliffe Avenue, we have added written submission from Janet Nancy Cavell. We have an added notice of motion, 12.1, for 9 Main Street North Waterdown, Municipal Register of Property of Cultural Value or Interest. And 12.2, notice of motion regarding the Liquor License Act, auxiliary zone changes.
Excellent. Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Moved by Councillor Brenda Johnson, second by Councillor Terry Whitehead. Electronic vote, please. All in favor? Terry? It's not, you have to get your finger warmed up. Okay, super. Thank you, everyone. Now I'm going to ask, are there any declarations of interest today? Seeing none, and may I please have an approval of the minutes of the previous meeting of June 18th? Moved by Councillor Whitehead, second by Councillor Partridge. All in favor? Electronic vote again, please. And we have before us, may I have a motion to approve the delegation requests for today, which are 6.1, 6.2, and 6.3. Lorraine Appleyard, respecting order to remove ducks and changes to the bylaw. Jennifer Smith, same, and Barbara Davis, same. Moved by Councillor Partridge, second by Councillor Farr. All in favor? Electronic vote, please. Thank you, everyone. Now, I understand Councillor Danko has a commitment till, I believe, 10. And he's asking if the delegation requests these 3 can be put off till 10 o'clock. What's the wish of the committee? Moved by Councillor Brenda Johnson, second by Councillor, anyone? Councillor Partridge, all in favor? And I'll electronic vote, Madam Clerk? Yes, thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Councillor White. Yeah, vote on it if you have a comment. So the delegates are aware, Madam Clerk?
Yes, and I think with the timing of the meeting, it probably will all work out.
Well, okay, Councillor Whitehead, did you wish to speak? Do you want to push your mic on?
Came in for a particular item, and I am on holidays.
Well, let's hope that we be very
8.2, so if you
efficient.
could move 8.2 up, that would be wonderful as well. Yes.
Okay. Madam Clerk, do you need a recorded vote? We have it moved and seconded to move 8.2
Well,
up.
I'll keep quorum first.
Councillor Farr, Councillor Johnson, all in favor? Thank you, Councillor. We're in holiday mode. Okay, excellent. So now we're going to move on to item 6.4 is Amber Lindsay of Urban Solutions respecting a request to apply for a minor variance at 100 Hamilton Street North. Is Amber present? Amber, come on down. Sorry? Oh, sorry.
I'm happy to approve.
So I'm going to ask, moved by Councillor Farr, second by Councillor Johnson, to approve the delegation today. Hang on, Amber. All in favor?
Right.
Recorded vote, hang on, sorry. Go ahead. Okay.
And since we're holding off on the duck delegations, I know we have municipal law enforcement in attendance, as we do in every planning committee, but we also have a duck in attendance. I would move to waive the rule and allow the duck to float around our pond out front at City Hall in the interim, if the
Really?
duck so wishes to do so. I know ducks
I don't
love
think we're going to
ponds.
be that long. But
All right,
thank you,
as long
Councillor.
as the duck is comfortable.
Okay, so we're going to move on now. We're on consent items, please, and thank you. So consent items, I'll go through. Item 7.1 is an amended Appendix 1 of Bylaw 18-199. Bylaw to prohibit, sorry, Councillor, do you want to move your item up right now? Okay, let's do that then. Let's go to 8.2. Sorry. 8.2 is an application, so we're into public hearings, delegations, real quick to deal with Councillor Whitehead's issue. Application for draft plan of condominium, vacant lands for lands located at 121 Fiddler's Green Road, Ward 12. Correct, Councillor? Ward 12, it's, okay. Members of the public, in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, please be advised that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of City of Hamilton, Council makes a decision before the draft plan of condominium. The person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the City of Hamilton to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, LPAT. And the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of the appeal before the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Is there anyone here in the audience wishing to speak to this particular item? If you could just show me with your hand. This again is 121 Fiddler's Green Road. You're here to speak to it? Or are you the applicant? You're here to speak to it? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay. So we have speakers then. I'm just going to move forward then. Just a second. Okay, so I'm going to ask then Melanie Snyder, would you please come forward and make a presentation?
Okay. Good morning, Chair, members of the committee, staff, and public in attendance. My name is Melanie Schneider. I'm the planner with the City of Hamilton, and I have reviewed this application. I've brought forward a staff report for your review and recommendation. The lands are located at 121 Fiddler's Green Road in Ancaster, on the east side of Fiddler's Green, just south of Wilson Street, where the divide goes from Wilson Street East to Wilson Street West. This image shows the subject lands with some aerial information. So here are the lands here, Wilson Street here, and then commercial uses along Wilson Street West, and then residential uses on either side, and commercial use right about here. This application is for a vacant land condo. As part of the condo, they are proposing 5 units for single detached dwellings, a private condominium road, and common element landscaping. So the common element road goes up here like this, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Unit 1 is up at the front. As part of this application, or as part of this development proposal, there was a site plan control application submitted. It received conditional approval December 17th, 2017 for 5 single detached dwellings in line with the condo application. The draft approval for this application is subject to standard condo conditions of approval and special conditions, such as a noise warning clause for Unit 1. I'll just go back here. So noise warning clauses for this unit here, as well as warning clauses for installation of communal mailboxes, and a condition to ensure that the condo is in conformity with the site plan application. This image here shows the subject lands from Fiddler's Green Road, and there is an existing single detached dwelling on the property. This image shows single detached dwelling to the north, as well as commercial use on the other side. Further north, this is an existing flower shop. And then to the south of the property, more single detached dwellings. And then on the west side of Fiddler's Green, additional single detached dwellings. As part of the circulation for this application, we circulated 187 property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands. As part of that circulation process, we received 2 written submissions. So there were a few concerns with the development proposal. First of all was the amount of zoning bylaw amendment applications that have been reviewed for this property. As part of this particular application, we are just implementing the approved zoning, which was last completed August 18th, 2017. The approved zoning is an R5688 zone modified under the Ancaster zoning bylaw. It was approved by council and further appealed to the OMB, which is now the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal. The LPAT did approve the zoning, And as such, we are processing the application based on that zoning. Another concern with the development proposal was retaining the existing dwelling on site. So one of the submissions did want to try and keep the house as part of the development application. As part of our review, we've identified that the house is not listed under the Heritage Act and therefore is not designated, and there's no mechanism for us that forces the house to be retained. As part of the public submissions, there was also a concern that the lands were considered vacant land because of the house. And I just want to clarify that vacant land just is a type of condo under the Condominium Act. It doesn't necessarily reflect what's on the land today. There were further concerns about the location of the driveway, which is on the southerly lot line. There were concerns that there were submissions that wanted to have the roadway instead of along the southerly lot line, to have it along the northerly lot line. From what I understand through the zoning review, there were concerns with having the roadway on the northerly side due to engineering constraints. Therefore, the zoning required a certain setback to the southerly lot line, which would allow space for the condo road where it is proposed today. There was also a concern with the location of Unit 5 on site, which may be in conflict with existing trees. As part of the review, the term unit only refers to basically the boundaries of each lot. So this is Unit 5, but it does not dictate the precise location of the dwelling on site. This is where the dwelling will be proposed. As part of the site plan application as well, we have reviewed a tree protection plan, which has been approved in principle. There are just some minor modifications that we have, and we'll be able to finalize them very shortly. But as part of that site plan application, we do review the tree protection plan to make sure that any trees that are proposed to be removed, we require a certain amount of compensation. In addition, there were some responses from the public which had concerns with stormwater management and grading. Staff note that stormwater management and grading is reviewed through the site plan application, so it's separate from the condo application. And lot coverage was also reviewed through the zoning bylaw amendment application. Again, the proposal does conform to the zoning bylaw. There were other concerns with how and where snow will be removed and stored on site, and again, that is a matter under the site plan application process. And additionally, there was other concerns with coordinating construction with installation of municipal services as part of this application. And again, that is beyond the condo process, but that is dealt with at the construction stage. The proposed draft plan of condo has merit and can be supported as it is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the growth plan for the Greater Gordon Horseshoe, and complies with the Urban Hamilton official plan. Prior to registration, the proposed condo will conform to the zoning bylaw as amended by bylaw 17181 and will implement the approved final site plan application. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you very much, Melanie. I see no questions, speakers on the list. I will just ask one, just to clarify. You mentioned at the beginning that this already went to the LPAT?
Through you, the zoning bylaw amendment application was appealed by a third party to the LPAT, and it went through its own LPAT hearing, and the board ordered the bylaw to move forward.
Okay, thank you for that. Alrighty, so may I have a motion, please, to receive Melanie's presentation? Moved by Councillor Whitehead, second by Councillor Partridge. All in favor? Carried. And then I'm going to turn to Glenn Wellings of Wellings Planning Consultant, and you're the agent for Michael Caravelli, and if you're both here, please come down and just confirm their position of support.
Hi, good morning, Madam Chair, committee members. My name is Glenn Wellings. I'm planning consultant for Sonoma Homes on this project. First of all, Madam Chair, I'd like to thank Ms. Snyder for her presentation and being so thorough, and also bringing forward today's staff report with conditions for the condominium. Just a little bit of history here. The zoning for the project, as Ms. Snyder mentioned, was approved by the OMB. It was before LPAT, so it was OMB at the time, back in 2017, and that was prior to Sonoma purchasing the subject lands. Sonoma purchased the lands with the intent of proposing a project that fully implemented the OMB-approved zoning bylaw without any variances. And I want to stress that, Madam Chair, there were no variances requested, and none will be requested going forward. And that is the project that's before you this morning. With respect to the concern regarding tree removal, I'm sympathetic, Madam Chair, to the concerns of tree removal, but that's not a decision that's being made by this committee today. That's a decision that was made quite some time ago when the OMB dealt with the proposed zoning. They also dealt with the design of the condominium, and through that condominium design, it was pretty evident that tree removal would need to take place in order to facilitate the development. So I am sympathetic to the concerns, but that issue's been dealt with. The project, as Ms. Snyder mentioned, received conditional site plan approval, with many conditions now being satisfied. Actually, Madam Chair and committee members, were very close to achieving full site plan approval. The vacant land condominium that's before committee this morning is intended to establish tenure for the proposed units and to implement the zoning approval as well as the site plan application. I need to stress to committee that we are not here this morning to re-argue the zoning for the project or to discuss the land use merits of the proposed development. That ship has sailed, and it sailed before Sonoma Homes purchased the property. We are here to address simply the tenure of the units in the vacant land condominium, and I know that, Madam Chair, it's probably a little bit difficult for the public to understand, and in a perfect world, it would have been nice for the condo to come forward with the zoning application to avoid this confusion. We've reviewed the conditions of condominium recommended by city staff, Madam Chair, and we're satisfied with those conditions and as recommended. I'm happy to answer any questions of committee, and certainly would be prepared, Madam Chair, to come back to the podium after public comment and respond to any comments received. So thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Wellings. I see no one on the speakers list. I'm just going to ask Councillor Farr to take chair real quick because I do want to raise concern. The ward councillor just emailed me this morning. Councillor Ferguson is unable to be here today, so he has raised a concern about a large tree, and he has also raised a concern about a condition that he be part of the review process for site plan approval. So has that already taken place? I don't know if you're aware, Mr. Wellings, or I can ask staff.
I probably, Madam Chair, best to ask staff on that.
So has that taken place, Melanie?
Through the chair to the committee, the application has received conditional approval already, and the elevations have been reviewed as part of that conditional approval. Councillor Ferguson was circulated on the site plan application, but to my knowledge, he did not provide comments.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll be sure he's aware of it. And thank you, Mr. Wellings.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So with that, may I have a motion to receive? I'll take the chair back. Councillor Farr, thank you. Moved by Councillor Whitehead, second by Councillor Partridge. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. And now I'm going to invite the public down. And just a reminder to please state your name, address, before presenting, and making sure you enter it in the book provided. And just as a caution, remember, for this is the public portion now, that this is only to deal with the condominium tenure. This has nothing to do with the zoning because that's already been approved. So I saw 2 hands went up on this side, so if you want to come down to the podium, this is your opportunity. And I guess I should read out as well. So let me see. Yep, no, that's it. Covered. Sorry, I'm jumping around on the roadmap today, Madam Clerk. My apologies.
Members of the Planning Committee, Tom and Teresa St. Michael from 25 Douglas Road in Ancaster. We are opposed to the application for a draft plan of condominium for 121 Fiddler's Green Road. Our survey, Greenside Acres, is designated existing residential in the Ancaster-Wilson Street Secondary Plan, which is formerly the Ancaster Official Plan. For more than 25 years, the subject land at 121 Fiddler's Green Road has been rezoned numerous times and has been changed from a residential modified 3 to a residential modified 5 after many Ontario Municipal Board decisions. The existing residential neighborhoods in Ancaster don't have condominium roads running through their backyards. Our neighborhoods have backyards backing onto backyards. To be respectful and compatible, the road should be moved at least to the north side of the property, which is what all the neighbors have asked for from the very beginning. The site plan control application should not have been conditionally approved. From information given to us from the very beginning by Cricket Magill, the application originally, there were too many unresolved issues. One was a tree protection plan. A plan was submitted with the application. It was the opinion of the Natural Heritage Planning staff that the layout of development should be reviewed to retain more trees on the subject property. After listing a number of trees that should be retained, the staff was of the opinion the development should be redesigned to retain those trees. Why would trees be cut down if it's not necessary? 2, stormwater management. We still have the same concerns about drainage. Is the pipe suggested capable of handling the water of the 5 houses, driveways, and the road out to Fiddler's Green? We're concerned about flooding in our existing properties, and if the pipe is clogged, blocked, or just incapable of handling more water as our weather is more severe due to climate change, we are not convinced routine maintenance will be done to ensure that that doesn't happen. 3, the purchase and sale agreement will include warning clause A. It reads, purchasers are advised that the sound levels due to increasing road traffic may occasionally interfere with some activities of the dwelling occupants as the sound levels exceed the sound level limits of the City of Hamilton and the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation, and Parks. And that means all of us neighbors are going to be subjected to increased traffic and noise from the development at 121 Fiddler's Green Road. Well, we don't think so. I'm asking the Planning Committee to not approve the application for draft plan of condominium for the subject lands at 121 Fiddler's Green Road. I'm going to close by referring to bylaw number 18-105, which is a pilot project for ER zones. It's under appeal, and I understand why. It doesn't go far enough to curb the monster home epidemic in existing residential neighborhoods. But in our case, it doesn't address the situation we face here in our neighborhood of rezoning in existing residential neighborhoods. By allowing rezoning, you're forcing intensification where it's not needed. We're already seeing a natural change in our neighborhoods from cottages, side splits, and bungalows like our house to larger, newer homes. Let the older neighborhoods take care of themselves naturally. Stop the rezoning in existing residential neighborhoods and protect our older neighborhoods. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions of the presenter? Seeing none, go ahead, Ms. St. James. Ms. St. Michael, sorry.
My name is Mrs. St. Michael.
Michael, got
I
it.
just have a few comments looking back and to the developer. This, when you comment on you circulated 187 property owners with 120, within the 120 meters, you're really falsifying that information because at 109, that is a seniors building and it's a geared to income. And if you solicited those people, you're really, it's false information, and you're just pretending. The residents across the street from this property are adults, but to solicit seniors is just, it's really terrible. And to solicit at 175, which is another senior community, is, you're pretending that you're engaging the community, and I find that really, really disturbing.
So just for the record, Ms. St. Michael, that is the public planning process. That's a request.
I understand, but I want to
So I
clarify
just wanna-
who
I apologize
you,
for the comments to the developer himself. Staff would have circulated the same area. Thank you.
I'm just clarifying that information. The other thing I want to say is, I'm pretty sure, we've been here down this road a couple times, that I think there's somewhere in the Planning Act that this development, having a road in my backyard, might decrease the value of my property. And this property has been in my home for over 55 years. I grew up there as a child. So I'd like someone to respond to that. The other thing I'd like to respond to is when we're talking about the mailbox and the mail delivery not being able to be at 121, these 5 homes, the only federal property that is owned by Canada Post is on Douglas Road. Because as a child, it was my job to pick up the mail. And it is at, I think it's Mr. Tickle's old home. There's young people beside Dave's house. I don't know what number you are, but 19. That, just adjacent, there's a sort of a large lump of property there, and that is the only federal land that the post office box can be placed on. So these guys that you're gonna build the 5 homes, they're gonna have to walk up to Douglas. These are facts, this is information, this is things that, through you to the developer, needs to know. The other thing I don't think Tom mentioned was that this developer is going to go ahead and build. And if he does not sell these properties at $1.3 million, he is going to rent them. Now, I find that a little disturbing because as a property owner, you take great pride in your property. You maintain it, you put money into it. Now, as a renter, you don't care as much. You don't have as much passion. So I'm just putting that out there. The other thing I want to say, with the location of the driveway, as I find that this might devalue my house, my home, that moving that driveway, as I say in my world, anything is possible. And if you're going to clear cut that property, which I believe this man is gently telling me that can be moved. And I'm going to tell you that there's already been in a plan, I'm going to say it was about 7 years ago, 8 years ago, if my memory's going to help me out a little bit, that there were already a plan to widen Fiddler's Green Road. It's already in the works. And at my road, Douglas, was going to be a turning lane. So if we're doing this, it's already in the works. So we're actually helping a developer widen the road and help with the sewage. The other comment I have here, and it makes me smile because Tom and I have been involved in this, and this is a generational thing, because my dad, it was about 25 years ago, 30 years ago, they wanted to put 3 flagship lots in the backyard, and the whole neighborhood agreed. Said, that'd be kind of nice, 1, 2, 3. And they didn't go through with it because there was no money. This is what it's about. It's about dollars, shoving it in their pockets. And this statement bothers me. It says, Hamiltonians have a high level of trust and confidence in. in their city government. And this statement bothers me. It says, Hamiltonians have a high level of trust and confidence in their city government. And this statement bothers me. It says, Hamiltonians have a high level of trust and confidence in their city government. And this statement bothers me. It says, Hamiltonians have a high level of trust and confidence in their city government. I just don't think so. Because I want to believe we can cooperate, make this work. Because I'm not opposed to development. I like things bigger, newer, more efficient. But I also, Saturday, when we lost the power in Ancaster, Dundas, and Waterdown, 700,000 people lost their power. And they also have flooded basements. Tom commented on climate change. I know in Ancaster we have hot spots, and Lloyd won't disclose where they are. But I do know that on Fiddler's Green Road, there is absolutely no severances allowed to happen because of the flooding. So when I raised this concern about my home, and I asked the last time I was here, I said I want a written guarantee that my backyard and my basement is not going to flood, and they won't give it to me. And yet on Saturday, my patio was, my larger patio in the backyard, was 3 inches under water.
So is my yard. Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
I think there was some clarity that needs to be provided. I think one of them was the Canada Post federal property. In fact, the City of Hamilton lost a case in the courts with Canada Post. In fact, Canada Post has a right to put post offices on any city right away.
I think they are doing that.
Sorry, she's,
So I just want to make that clear, because you said it had to be a federal property in your presentation. I'm just clarifying, no, it doesn't. It could be any city right away. The other question you asked, I'm going to, if I have the latitude to ask staff directly, was because you didn't really flush out the engineering piece and why the road needed to be on this side versus the north side. So I'm wondering if we could flush that out, because I think the term was engineering, but if we can sort of get a little more into understanding what those encumbrances were.
Through the chair to the committee, I unfortunately wasn't involved at the zoning stage with this application, but in consultation with the planner that was responsible for this application, my understanding was the grading constraints wouldn't allow the road to be on the north side.
Okay, so that deals with stormwater. The other thing is on the stormwater, and certainly my experience is most new development has a higher standard than a lot of the old developments. Just look at all the flooding in when I represent Ward 8, we discovered that we had a real storm management issue with pipes larger going in, or smaller going into, larger going into smaller pipes. You create it was causing all kinds of flooding issues, and I used to talk about Holbrook being a lake, and I think it still is. The issue is on storm management, our engineering staff apply the best standards to address those issues. In fact, I think what they can promise you, and I'll ask that question to staff, when you say you can't guarantee you won't be flooded, I think they can probably guarantee that this property, any water that emanates from this property is responsibility of the homeowner, or of that property owner. And the bylaw is pretty clear on that as well. So everything is designed that any water additionally added as a result of the development doesn't impact any neighbors.
I have a comment too about that, is we have a friend that we went to, he was contesting the bylaw, and he has a great issue with, he's over off of Lovers, and the house that was built beside him, the city did not, well, the developer, apparently the city does not have a grading policy. And they built the house higher, and he has been pumping out his backyard because the house beside him is graded higher. So he's getting the water from his neighbor's house, and he's pumping it back out into the street. And it's just been a nightmare.
So to that, Madam Chair, I can say that probably 5-6 years ago, maybe a little longer, I pushed, and we now have grading standards to all new development. that is now a part of the registry, I believe, on title. So that's now in place. The other clarification I wanted to get was, my understanding is that the LPAT already ruled on this. This was appealed. A third party, it wasn't city, it was a third party. So when you talk about government, this is a third independent party, ruled on the zoning. And my understanding, I think I heard in the presentation, also ruled on the design and the tree coverage. So that was already being determined by a third party.
Well, it's unfortunate for this fellow that it didn't happen for him, because he's been pumping water for the last year. And this came up when we were at what do you call it, Land Tribunal. And we were there in April, and the decision for this has not come down, because he appealed the City of Hamilton's bylaw on, what was it, the bylaw for the zoning? The zoning, what was the zoning number? I can't remember now.
Yeah,
off the top
so,
of my
sorry,
head.
just for clarification, Madam Chair, I'm talking about this particular application. And I just want to make sure you understand, as was presented, and I'm be stand corrected if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding this was appealed to LPAT or OMB,
Yes.
whatever it was at the time. They made a determination that the zoning, we go forward with the zoning bylaw, and they even went further on the tree preservation and design of the lot. So those decisions already been rendered by a third party.
Right,
understand
and
that.
when that Cricket McGill did it, because this guy's following Cricket McGill, we have a map that says that what trees were staying and going and, you know, the whole thing. So now, when one of our neighbors called Melanie, we said, no, it's all gonna be a clear cut. So we've got lots of different mixed messages that are coming through, and I guess that's why we're kind of,
Fair enough.
standing up and.
Thank you.
Thank you. With seeing no further questions, may I have a motion to receive? Actually, I'm going to ask, you've put your name, address, and phone numbers in the book. Do I have to go out to the public? There's more, yes?
We did. Yeah, we
Okay.
did.
And we'll receive at the end. So is there anyone else wishing to speak to this item in the audience today? Going once? Going twice? This is your only opportunity, and it's with regards to tenure as a condominium of this particular application. Going three times. I will close off to the floor then, and may I please have a motion to receive? Councillor Whitehead, second by Councillor Brenda Johnson. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. And a motion to close off to the floor. Moved by Councillor Whitehead, second by Councillor Partridge. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. And then, just going through, we also have an added submission today, Madam Clerk. We received that, correct, on this item or no? So we have an additional item that we had in the roadmap earlier today from Rosemary Morris. It's before us. Motion to receive, moved by Councillor Whitehead, second by Councillor Farr. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. And with that now, may I please have a motion to approve the staff application? Moved by Councillor Whitehead, second by Councillor Brenda Johnson. All in favor? Electronic vote, please. That's okay. Thank you, everyone. And if I just could ask staff to please follow up with Councillor Ferguson with regards to site plan. I'm not sure where he is and understanding where it's at. Thank you very much, everyone. We're now with the indulgence of Councillor Whitehead, which is going to leave us shortly. We're going to move up now because we moved Councillor Whitehead's concern forward, and we're going to go back to delegation requests. So I have 6-1 Lorraine Appleyard. Come on down.
To start?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
So, good morning, and thank you for allowing me to be here. My name is Lorraine Appleyard, and this is Quacker, and this is my pet duck. And I'm here before council today to implore the council members to give Quackers clemency and her sister Sunny. Quacker is turning 9, which is quite old for a duck, for any duck. And I've had her since she was a week old. The City of Hamilton's bylaw calls her livestock, and I'm here to impress upon you that she is not livestock, she is a pet. She's completely domesticated, and she relies upon humans not only for her care, but for company. Ducks do imprint. So as she was incubated and raised as a pet, she views humans as she views me as her mother. An animal that is domesticated cannot be turned out as livestock. They cannot fend for themselves, and to do so will put her at detriment. As I said, she is pretty elderly for a duck. She has arthritis in her right knee, which means she has special needs, and she is lame, and she would not thrive in a setting with other ducks. She cannot be turned out to go into another flock. She does live in my backyard, in a shed, in a cage. She is allowed to, I let her roam in my backyard. She has a run also, and she comes in the house too. I say this because in my yard, she's completely protected. If she were to be turned out to the country, she would be at risk of being killed by coyotes, foxes, hawks, raccoons, any kind of wild animals. A little bit about me is that I have had ducks since I've been in grade 5, and I am now approaching 50, which is not a number that I share readily, but just letting you know that I've had pet ducks for a very long time. And in fact, the Hamilton Spectator ran a story on me 25 years ago about my pet ducks. And CHCH did a story with Connie Chung, interviewed me with my pet duck when I was 12. They do make lovely pets. They're not difficult to care for. She comes inside during the wintertime when we have those cold snaps. They do make different sounds to communicate, and she can communicate her feelings. She has a sound for hello, she has a sound for excitement, and another sound for fear. They're actually very, very good communicators and very interactive as a pet. So I'm really just here to implore upon you to please consider an exemption for my pet ducks, for Quacker and Sunny. It's no different than having a domesticated rabbit or a pot-bellied pig. And it is the only home that they know. And again, to have them go outside the city, outside the protection of being in this domesticated area, they are at risk of being killed. And I really don't want to see that happen to my pets. So I'm proposing, please, for an exemption for them, for perhaps a trial or a pilot project in the Rollstein neighborhood where they live. I'm hoping that the council will find it in the hearts to be able to approve clemency for Quacker and for Sunny, and to allow them to stay as pets with me. And I thank you for allowing me to speak today, and if there's any questions, I welcome them.
Thank you, Lorraine, for your presentation and for your patience in waiting this morning. I was wondering if you could give us a brief rundown of what the events led up to you being here today.
I honestly don't know. There was a bylaw officer showed up on our front door and issued us a summons to comply, and that's why I'm here.
So you had your ducks as your pets for 9 years plus, and then out of the blue, you had an order to comply from bylaw.
That's correct.
And since then, maybe bring us up to speed on what's happened with Quacker and Sunny. And
I was fortunate enough, there was a lot of support from the community at the time, because there was a Spectator article, and actually an old friend of my husband's reached out, and they are living with them now. However, it is, and they're outside the city limits, although it's not ideal for them because they are in this wide open space off of a farmer's field. They are in a coop, but it's a little bit of work for them to look after her. And my greatest fear is that they're at risk of the coyotes and the foxes that live outside those limits.
Thank you for your advocacy on behalf of your pet and Quacker.
Thank you very much.
I have a couple questions for staff after we receive the presentation.
Okay.
And I think Councillor Whitehead's on the list.
Yeah, and I always have a pleasure talking to you in that when I represented and your husband in Ward 8. The question I have is, you're looking for clemency, so you're not suggesting a citywide approval for ducks as pets, but you're making a very compelling argument that you've had your duck or ducks for over 9 years, and to make a dramatic change now wouldn't be showing any consideration or sensitivity to that bonding and that exercise over the length of time that you've had. So the question I have, if this council was to consider a one-time clemency, that would suggest then that you couldn't get more ducks. It would just be the lifespan of the ducks you currently have. Would you be okay with that?
My fear with that is that ducks are she does have a companion duck, and if something were to happen to her, then that would leave my duck Sunny as lonely as they're bonded. But I would do whatever was necessary to be able to see this out. And you are correct that I am asking just for a clemency with respect to keeping them.
Okay, I just wanted to get that clarification. It's very difficult when you're dealing with, because there's, it becomes a slippery slope when you have animals that are not traditionally domesticated. Clearly, the one in your hand is. And it's clear that you've taken care of it over 9 years with care, and it's obviously a bonding. So I'm looking at a situation where perhaps there's you've demonstrated 9 years of having the duck and the ducks. It might be a little bit harsh to now just destroy that relationship at this point in time, and maybe a consideration as a one-off on the circumstances of this case that needs to be considered to allow you to see their lives through. But certainly, it's not a carte blanche to bring more ducks in for anyone else in the broader community, or even, in fact, yourself. That might be more palatable. I'm not suggesting it'll pass.
I understand.
But that might be more palatable approach than just banning our...
And I would be in agreement with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I just ask, how is it that this became an issue? How did someone complain, or how did it?
No, someone must have complained, but I'm not sure. I've gone and I went to my neighbors, and no one said that they were the ones that called, so I'm not sure how.
Not necessarily be honest with you.
I
at
understand
that point.
that too.
Okay, I was just curious if you knew. We can talk with staff about it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. So with that, thank you, Lorraine, and we'll receive all the presentations at the end, and then we'll deal with the item.
So
Do I
am
now
I free to go then?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is Jennifer Smith here? Come on down, Jennifer. Morning, Jennifer.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Smith, and I'm a neighbor of Lorraine Appleyard's. So I would like to speak in regards to my experience with having a neighbor with ducks. The issues I have encountered began on May 23rd of this year, when I saw a rat in my backyard from a tunnel that originated in Lorraine Appleyard's backyard. I immediately went to her house to speak to her about it, and she advised me that she was already aware of the rats and had seen them go from her backyard to mine. Her husband, Nick, had already put out poison as well, I was told. I have a child and a dog that go into my backyard, and it was upsetting that someone was aware that rats were coming into my backyard and had chosen not to say anything, especially as we know each other and our children are friends. Lorraine's husband, Nick, for the next few days put out rat poison and let me know that he was seeing dead or dying rats in his backyard, so he knew that the poison was working. On May 26th, I decided to contact a professional pest control company as I had concerns about secondary poisoning as well as the large number of dead rats that were being discovered. As per what Nick had told me, he was finding 4 to 5 dead rats a day in his backyard, and our other neighbor, who also shares a fence line with Lorraine, had a few as well. At that point, my dog had discovered one in our backyard. An employee from the pest control company came to my house on May 27th and implemented a rodent prevention program, which consisted of rat bait stations that lined just the backyard fence that I share with the house with the ducks, since he said that was the source of the problem. I was assured that I would not have to worry about secondary poisoning from the poison they would be using. The employee from the company specifically said that the rat problem was coming from the backyard with the ducks. He wrote this down in my bill, which I have handouts of, and also emailed to Lisa Chamberlain. And he also told Lorraine directly that the ducks were the cause of the rats, as they are attracted to the duck food, duck feces, and their hay. Out of an abundance of caution, I also took down a greenhouse I had in my backyard, as although I was advised that it was absolutely the ducks attracting the rats, I was also told that rats like humidity, and I wanted to make our neighborhood as inhospitable as possible. This greenhouse was built by my ex-husband about 4 years ago when we were still together, and it took him a considerable amount of time and money to build for me, and was a source of enjoyment and food. I had not planted anything in it for several months, though, because I had been noticing tunnels from an animal continuously appearing in it from under the fence line from Lorraine's backyard into the structure since last year, and I did not want it to be a food source for any animals. At the source, I had guessed that it was probably something like voles. It did not even cross my mind that it could be rats until I saw one this spring. Then, on May 28th, I saw on the front page of the Hamilton Spectator a story about why Lorraine should be able to keep her ducks. Animal control had been contacted, and from what I understand, she was advised that she would have to rehome her ducks. Nowhere in the story was it mentioned that we had a rat infestation in the neighborhood in her interview. It was later brought to my attention by a friend that Lorraine had started a change.org petition to gather signatures to allow her to bring her ducks back home. And again, no mention was made in this petition of the rat infestation the ducks had caused. A few weeks later, after the ducks had been rehomed, Nick came to my house and agreed that the ducks had attracted the rats and gave me $200 towards my $400 pest control bill, which I appreciate, but I also think it makes it clear that they are well aware that the ducks were attracting rats. I am an animal lover myself. I'm very sympathetic to the ducks' plight. They are innocent in all of this, and I'm sure they're lovely animals. I absolutely understand that they would become familiar with Lorraine and her family after being with them for so long. But these ducks were knowingly being illegally kept in the city by the family, as per what the newspaper article states. And Lorraine must have known that, as such, at any time they could be removed. So if the ducks are experiencing any distress because of this situation, unfortunately, the blame lies with the owners themselves, as they chose to put these animals in a tenuous, unstable position, relying only upon the chance that nobody would choose to enforce the bylaw that's in place. Personally, due to the fact that most backyards in the city are small, including the one where these ducks are living, I think the best place for ducks would be on a farm or a sanctuary if they are too domesticated to be in the wild. I would also like to note that I'm a single mother trying to maintain a home of my own. I have no family nearby to help me, and I've had to reach out to my ex-husband to help me disassemble my greenhouse and put up barriers between mine and Lorraine and Nick's fence line to deter any more rats from coming over. I've had the cost of $400 from the pest control company, plus another $100 to rent a truck and bring the greenhouse building supplies to the city dump. Even with Nick paying me $200 towards my pest control bill, I'm still out of pocket $300, and this is now the second day of work I've had to arrange to have time off from to deal with this situation. The first one being when I had to meet the pest control company at my home during my work hours, as that was the only time they were available. Between the distress of having rats on my property, the loss of my greenhouse, the out-of-pocket costs I've sustained, the time off work I've had to arrange, the stress of having multiple acrimonious conversations with Lorraine about the issue, and then having to come here today to explain the other side of this story, frankly, I'm exhausted.
Perfect. Hang on 5 minutes.
Perfect. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, I do. Stay there. Lorraine, I'm sorry, you had your 5 minutes? No, I'm sorry. No, you're not helping yourself. No. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation, Jennifer. I'm sure it puts you in a difficult situation.
And please note that I have always liked Nick and Lorraine, and it's nothing personal. It's very distressing to have, just going to my backyard. It's like, I'm sorry.
Sorry. I'm sorry, Lorraine, I will have to ask you that you'll have to be removed if you don't comply with our regulations. You had your 5 minutes, please. As I stated, you're not helping yourself. Please have a seat. Thank you. I will control the meeting. Councillor Danko, your question.
The current status of the rats, has the pest control company been successful? Is there still evidence of rats?
So they put rat bait stations out. They've been out since the date I mentioned. I have not seen any more rats. When Nick came over and brought me the money, and that was a few weeks ago, I don't have the data on me, but if you need it, I can get it. He said that he hadn't seen any for 3 days at that point. So that would have been, I'm guessing, probably a couple weeks that we had rats. In the first 4 days, from what he had told me, he had 19. So that's why I'm saying 4 to 5 a day that he was having. Again, I don't know if that number dwindled because then we stopped communicating on a daily basis. So I'm not sure what the end total was. I know our other neighbor who's beside me and also adjoins Lorraine's fence line, he had a couple because I had spoken to him. Because when I initially talked to Lorraine about when I saw the first one, she had told me she had seen them coming in my backyard and also my next door neighbor Randy's backyard. So I had talked to him and he said that he'd been putting poison out too, and he had had a few. I don't know exactly how many, but I know that there were a few that he told me.
And just to be clear, your concern is not with the ducks themselves.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think her ducks, I'm sure, are lovely, and I feel bad for her, and I feel bad for the ducks. I don't think it's a situation any of us want to be in, and I'm really sad that it came to this.
So you
Sorry, Lorraine, please. I'm going to give you one more opportunity, and then I will ask you to please leave the chambers. I am being very respectful of you. You have to be respectful of our rules and our committee. Thank you. Please, not for you. You had your 5 minutes. Thank you. Go ahead.
Has the city been involved at all with the rat problem specifically?
I called public health and I talked to them to make sure that they were aware. They said that basically it's the property owner's responsibility to deal with it. And they said that, like I told them what I was doing, and they said what they could do is they could go to, and Lorraine and I had a conversation about this, having the city get involved, and she said that she would be willing for them to come, to her property. So when I talked to them, I said, this is what's going on. They said they can't force her and her husband to use a professional pest control company, but what they can do is they can go there, they can strongly advise that they do so, and that they can just basically give her advice on how to deal with the situation, but because it's private property, they can't do anything. They said basically if it's like a landlord-tenant thing, they can do more. I don't really fully understand, but Lorraine did know that I was calling. And I don't know if what happened with that, but that's what I was told on the phone.
My understanding is public health can get involved if there's a rat infestation, but it depends if that's from a sewer or city property, where in this case it would be on private property.
They said all they could do is go speak to them. I don't know.
I think that's something I can follow up later with staff as well. And I have a couple questions for our staff, but thank you for the presentation.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Jennifer, thank you for coming in. I know this must be a very difficult situation for you.
It's okay. I just don't like that it's become such a thing where our children are friends, and it's just not a good situation.
No, and I fully hear that. I do want to commend you for the amount of communication that you've done with your neighbor and taking the time to try and find solutions. Because what we just heard was that there was no communication, no idea of why the situation was that brought the two of you here today. And now what I'm hearing is that you've communicated extensively.
Absolutely. Absolutely, multiple times.
Yeah. And you also have the right to stand there and have a presentation and speak to this council just as your neighbor did, and not to be harassed and made to feel uncomfortable in this council chamber. So I want to make that point, and I'll ask Lorraine to sit down and to not interfere with these proceedings anymore, as Madam Clerk has asked. So at this point, I do want to let you know that I am a rural councillor, and there is a reason why ducks and chickens are kept out in the rural area.
rules. That's what I think.
Yes, no, and it's true, and we have dealt with this bylaw a few times, and there is a reason why we voted to keep animals that should be out on a farm and in the rural areas. So I won't say any more than that, but I agree with you. I hear what you're saying, and I thank you so very much for coming in. And, again, I'm very impressed with the courage it took for you to come in here, and for your level of communication to try and resolve this is really quite commendable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I first got elected, we had a rat infestation on Mohawk, and the public health indicated that they couldn't get involved unless it's inside the house. I remember going to visit on Mohawk when dusk evening and the whole backyard started to move. He was killing 10 to 20 rats a night in his backyard. And there were some domesticated rats in that mix as well that obviously were let go at some point. But when they did the whole game plan,
Right.
they had to involve probably about 20 households, backyard adjacent households as anyone above. So if you had water, a garden, bird seed, lumber, firewood, all those kinds of things were natural attractions to rats. They had to all be cleaned up, moved out, which many of them did because the infestation was so bad. So I'm trying to, and last year we had a lot of rat complaints across the city with development and going out into Greenfield and so forth. It obviously disturbs their homes and creates yet another problem. So I'm trying to understand, do you feel that this duck and what's happening there is the main reason for all the rats being attracted, or are there other issues within that neighborhood?
I do. I can explain the situation in my backyard. So I had a greenhouse that was flush against the fence that I share with Lorraine. So that's where I initially started noticing the tunnels. But like I indicated, I had not been planting for months. Like, I hadn't even looked in there all winter. Like, nothing had been in there because I thought, you know what, something keeps coming. And I thought it was voles, or like, I had no idea. Anyway, and then it was in the spring when I saw multiple tunnels. I'm like, what is going on? And you can see they're all coming from that backyard. But like I said, there was no food in there. My backyard, I did have some firewood stacked against the side of the house, which once the pest control company came, they said, you know what, that they might like that, like want to run around. So I removed all of that. And really, there's not much else in my backyard. I advised Lorraine. She knew, in fact, when the Hamilton Spectator was doing her interview, that's when the pest control company was at my house. When I was driving home from work to, like, in the middle of my work day to meet them, I had seen her on her front porch. I said, you know, I have a pest control company coming, which I had already told her about, but she didn't want to go with the professional. Like, she wanted to just do it on her own, which is fine, I guess. And she had said, well, I have this Hamilton Spectator coming, so maybe I'll come over after. But I was like, okay, like, I didn't want to argue. So she did come, though, before the pest control company left. The employee there, she came over and he told her directly, he said, your rats are the problem. They are causing this. He's like, I've seen this before. I've been doing this for 10 years. And she was confused as to why, like, the rat problem was happening, such a situation right now. And he just said, well, I don't think he directly answered that question. I don't know if he knew the answer, but he said it was the duck food, you know, that spreads around, the duck feces, and also, I guess, like, where they live, like, I guess their hay and stuff. So I know what he told me. Again, I have handouts with the bill, him specifically saying, he put a note down, this is the ducks. And her husband paid me $200 towards that bill, which indicates to me that he is also agreeing with me that it's the ducks. That's all I know.
So how long you lived there?
11 years.
And they've had the duck for 9 years. Is that correct?
Lauren and I disagree on this. I don't believe she's had the duck for that long, but I'm not going to get into an argument about that. She's had the ducks for several years, yes, and she had chickens before that.
And you've had trouble for how long now?
I saw it in May.
Sure.
I saw the first rat in May, but tunnels had been happening for months before that. So that's, but the first time I saw a rat was this spring.
And the way that you understand she feeds the duck is she just spreads the food. I was just reading a quick reference, and they said the rats won't be attracted to duck food, floating duck food, meaning in the water. But if they're not feeding their duck that way, they're just.
This was something I asked her as well in one of our conversations about the duck food, and she was saying she has it in a metal bowl that she puts away. But I said, well, right, I said, I understand that, but when they eat, that would make a mess. Like, you can't pick up every grain. And she herself said, yes, that's like a fair point, right?
Yeah, no, that's fair. What I read was just because ducks will eat from the water, the food from the water, the food's in the water, the rats aren't attracted, according to the article. But you're indicating that's not how they feed them. They feed them out of a bowl. And
that's what Lorraine told me. That's so, I guess.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Seeing no further speakers, thank you for your comments, Jennifer. Appreciate that. I'm now going to call out Barbara Davis. Please come down.
Good morning, everyone. I'm actually a neighbor of Jen's. I'm on the far side of her property. I've lived in that area now for 33 years, and never in that time period did we ever have a problem with rats or anything like that. Jen and I both love animals. We've had many over the course of the years. And I've just spent a small fortune keeping my backyard all nicely, and the last thing I want is rats in there eating there. And I have a grandson that is frequently visiting me, and I also don't want anything to happen when he's around visiting, and they're curious little people, so I don't need that. I truly have nothing against the ducks, and I only learned about the ducks about 2 years ago. And only at one time, my husband saw one of the ducks in another yard, and so it had somehow gotten out of there into another yard. Other than that, like I said, I have nothing against them, but there is a bylaw in place, there is a law in place, and I don't understand why she's been allowed to keep these ducks for this length of time. And I think we've been very generous to not have complained about the ducks before this time.
Thank you, Barbara. Questions? Councillor Danko?
Thank you for the presentation, Barbara. So just for my clarity of the situation, so for a number of years you weren't aware that the ducks were even there, had no problem with it, until you and your neighbors started noticing the rat infestation. Have you had to go through a pest control company? Or is it affecting?
No, nothing's come as far as my yard. We live in a court, so it's quite a big yard that Jennifer has till it gets to my backyard. So I'm really here to support Jennifer. This has put her through a lot. She has been very upset about this. She loved her greenhouse. She's had to get rid of that at great expense to her and her husband. And I just truly feel very bad for what's happened with this situation. I truly feel bad for the ducks too, because I just feel that they never should have been there in the first place. But again,
thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Seeing no, well, that was the delegation request, so I'm going to now ask that we just receive all three delegation requests. Moved by Councillor Brenda Johnson, second by Councillor Brad Clark. All in favor? I'm sorry, Madam Clerk. I'll wait till you're back. It's okay. So we're just receiving all three presentations. Moved by Councillor Brenda Johnson, second by Councillor Brad Clark. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. So with that, we will move on. And we have before us, sorry, I have...
Sorry, Madam Chair, can you give me just one, like 10 seconds?
I can absolutely do that. Yes. Yeah, I will clarify as soon as Madam Clerk comes back, certainly. Thank you, Madam Clerk, and it's just been raised that, would you like to move that? Councillor Brenda Johnson would like to move, and Councillor Clark would like to second, correct? That the order stands. All in favor? Do we need a recorded vote, Madam Clerk? Maybe we should. Okay, thank you. With that, give you a second. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Everyone, all in favor? That carries. Thank you, everyone. So we've dealt with that item. Now we're going to move on to 7.1 consent items. So we have before us items, just going to go through it here. Sorry, because we've been bouncing back and forth. Seven one is to amend Appendix 1 of Bylaw Number 18-199, bylaw to prohibit driving school instructing in the restricted areas and expand Schedule A of the administrative penalty system. Bylaw number APS bylaw number 17-225 to include contraventions of bylaw 18-199. Councillor is wards 4 and 5. Councillor Collins is moving. Second by Councillor Farr. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. Electronic vote, please. I believe Councillor Whitehead has left the meeting, so thank you. That carries. Thank you. 7.2, hearing officer appointment bylaw for administrative penalty system. Questions or comments? A motion to approve, moved by Councillor Brenda Johnson, second by Councillor Maureen Wilson. All in favor? Our electronic vote again. It's okay. You're allowed. Again, please. Thank you. Thank you. 7.3, amendments to yard maintenance bylaw 10-118 to include an operative vehicles. Councillor Brenda Johnson to this item. Go ahead.
Thank you. I believe, just so I get this straight, so yard maintenance, just to take it one step further, I think that last term I've been asking for the rural residential to have the grass cutting.
Yeah.
Settlement areas aside, thank you, Robert. This is why you came today. So Robert, my ward has been significantly smaller this term, but in the past 2 terms, I've had several properties in the rural areas, specifically Ridge Road, just to name one, where the rats, again, were coming from this unkept yard over to the neighbor's yard. It was a strip of houses. It's not a settlement area, it's rural residential. So we kept trying to go back and finding how we could get the property owner to maintain their property. Even though it's in the rural area, they should be maintaining their property so they're not a detriment to their neighbors. There's another one that came in, and it was out in the Glanbrook rural area, and it was nicknamed the Rat Hotel. So I was hoping to see in our yard maintenance something to do with rural residential, not just settlement areas like Woodburn and Blackheath, but rural residential areas that should be kept to the same standards as city maintenance. So have you got any thoughts on this? Did you not get the memo?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair. Yes, we are aware of that. This process is merely a matter of clarifying what is already in the bylaw, just for rural settlement areas. But it is on our work plan to meet with you later this year to have discussions of a new service level or a new initiative into the rural area to deal with overgrown vegetation.
Thank you very much, Robert. I did, in fact, back last term, have a motion ready to go, but I was told to wait. I took that motion just to get some history on and to get some background to agricultural and rural affairs, and all the farmers that were sitting around the table thought it was very reasonable. So I'm just, anytime you're ready, that motion, I'm ready to go. So that would be great. Thank you very much. I'll move this at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Clark.
So along the same lines as Councillor Johnson, my ward is now expanded into a rather large rural area. About 85% of it is now rural. And I was surprised to see how many properties are being transformed into junkyards, kind of like Sanford and Sons. vehicles everywhere, metal everywhere, and I'm finding it frustrating that we can't enforce rules with regards to that. So I would be very supportive of tightening our bylaws to ensure that we can actually clean up these properties. It's not fair when you've got properties across the road and beside them that are being well-maintained and they're really nice-looking farms, and they look out their front window and they see Sanford and Son. It's just not right. And we have to do something. So I support Councillor Johnson with any motion that's required to direct staff in that regard, Mr. Leendertz, but we really do need to move on this, please.
Thank you, and if I could just relinquish the chair to Councillor Farr real quick. I concur with both previous speakers, especially Councillor Brenda Johnson, as inheriting the easterly end of Winona. I have all of a sudden received complaints with regards to yard maintenance along the south side of Highway number 8, and bylaw telling the homeowner, well, you're in the agricultural area, so there is no controls. When I have an asphalt walkway that goes all down Highway number 8 and they're not cutting back either side, I have major issues with this as well. So I would certainly appreciate being involved with Councillor Brenda Johnson in any reviews and any amendments to come forward, because I believe, the least that has to be done, it's maintained so far back from a city access passageway, okay? So I just wanted to put that on as well, Mr. Easterkey. Thank you. Councillor Farr, I'll take the chair back. So with that, Councillor Brenda Johnson, you're moving item 7.3, seconded by Councillor Brad Clark. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. No electronic vote. Councillor Farr, thank you. Great. 7.4 is Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee Report 1904. There's a motion to approve the recommendations before us. Any questions or comments? I have none. Moved by Councillor Partridge, second by Councillor Danko. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. Carried. We're jumping around. Madam Clerk, I just want to be sure. We had 6.4. Should I just complete that? Was Amber Lindsay?
So if we go to page 4 of the roadmap, we're going to start with 8.1, then we're going to proceed to 8.3, and then Amber Lindsay comes after that.
Perfect. Just want to be sure. We haven't forgotten you, Amber. Thank you. So 8.1 is now we're into public hearings and delegations. So I have James Lafferty respecting concerns with Southbrook Golf Club regarding ongoing issues, zoning permits, and dumping. This was approved at the June meeting. James, can I have you come down, sir? Thank you.
Chair, Council. My name's James Lafferty. I live in Binbrook. I've been living on Corliss Road for 30 years. I live beside Southbrook Golf Course. I've had good relationship with the neighbors previous, who were there for almost all of my kids' lives. The property was sold in 2015, and through you, Council, to Brenda Johnson. Brenda Johnson has been helping me tremendously with this issue of trucks. The last few years, we've had about 100 trucks a day. I was here last spring speaking about this issue. They've been dumping on these loads of dirt on the NCPS, is that correct? NP, yeah, Niagara Lands, for quite some time. It's on Google Maps. You can see the area is quite large. I have a USB disk with me. I've installed security cameras to record the number of trucks, which I'd like to present today as well. I just have a few brief things still to add because it's the issues are still ongoing, and please excuse me because I am nervous. This spring, this truck started coming again, and I keep sending notices to Brenda Johnson about the ongoing issues. They've built the pond behind my house, and this spring they've raised the pond. They've built it up. It used to be 3 acres of a pond. It must be 11 acres now. It's about 100 feet from my house now. The water table is very high. These recent rains flooded my pool and caused dirt to go into it. So there is some changes there. Like I say, the pond is getting very close to my house. My issue is, does he have permits to do this? My understanding was the trucks were to stop last year, and they were to fix the road and my other issues that I have. But he's gone ahead and built this pond. I've tried working with Southbrook. I've tried talking to them. They keep telling me that it is going to stop, but it hasn't. It was supposed to stop in May, and it hasn't until just recently. I don't know why, but it has. The culvert he's installed, I don't think is big enough. It causes the pond to backfill across 56 Highway onto other farmers' properties. He's not, the farmer can't, for other reasons perhaps, he can't farm the land around my house. I have fields growing, probably 20 acres that is unfarmable now. And I'm here today to perhaps get some sort of resolution from the council. I've had to appear here twice, and I think this will hopefully be my last time. We have ticks that are blowing because of the fields. On the video, I have trucks that kick up dust that gets in the pool. It's the same issues as last year. I've worked with the roads department, so we do seem to be making some progress on that with the ditches and the other issues with the road. Recently, he's installed a diesel pump about 150 feet from my house. The pump is, it's a large, it's on a trailer. I can see it from my kitchen. This pump goes to pump the water from this pond to irrigate Southbrook's land. They originally were taking the water from the Niagara River, which is, excuse me, I've missed the name place, the Welland River. And so he's supposed to take this water from the pond now. Now this, I don't know if he has permits for all this, but it just seems, Madam Chair, that the issues just never stop. So perhaps today I can, hopefully, maybe you guys can help me here. I don't really have much more else to say.
I have Councillor Brenda Johnson's going to ask questions.
And thanks, James. I know this is your second time being here, and I can really appreciate the frustration that you've been going through. Just to give my colleagues a bit of a background, we did have a big, huge meeting on site with the NPCA and Carlo, who's with us right now, I'm going to come back to you for corrections and comments, please. John Searles and Edward Zardo. My understanding is that the south side ditch is going to be extended. The north side ditch is going to be deeper. The driveways will be leveled off. The berm should be seeded and a silt fence be installed. And the most important thing is that the MPCA is going back to find out about non-compliance and where these permits, if in fact, were they ever issued, because they need to be issued by the NPCA. So my concern as well, along with all these other things that were going on, is that we've already fixed up the road once because of all this truck traffic. And now I'm not prepared to do it again, so we're going back to whoever issued these permits to get the road completed. But in the meantime, our roads operations are going to do whatever they can to help address the flooding in the area. So, and I'm glad James said something about ticks, because that's the other thing I forgot to talk about with the rural maintenance, the yard maintenance, because the ticks are so much on the rise, and that's what's causing the problems as well. So Carlo, through you, Chair, to Carlo, is there anything I'm missing on this that we have yet to do?
Through the chair of the committee. No, what you said was correct. Public Works will be out to reinstate some of the ditches. The golf course will be seeding and installing a silt fence to prevent any washout into those ditches again. We've engaged the NPCA. There are some outstanding permits. I don't know the status of those permits, but they will be engaging the golf course to rectify any changes that they've made, including the installation of that culvert. And the diesel generator was brought up, and there was some concerns with it being that close to a body of water.
Okay, so thank you. So through you to Carlo, and I'm sorry for keeping James here, because I may have a question for James at the end of all this, so we can get this all wrapped up. So my understanding, this generator was new, that's coming in. Where is it that we can go back to the generator operator and tell them to move it or put it somewhere or enclose it to make it less noisy? Because if you can't enjoy your backyard, that's not fair. So is there any ramifications anything we've got going for us there?
Through the chair of the committee, not sure if any noise bylaws would supersede or would come into play in this instance. I think provided that they're operating within certain hours, I'm not sure that there's much that we can do, but I'll leave that to our bylaw enforcement.
And thank you for that. And James, this is the first I've heard of the generator, or at least I've noticed it, so we'll follow that up as well. And also, Carlo, is there anything put in place for the fact that James just said his pool has been washed out with mud because of this newly constructed pond? Is this where the silt fencing is supposed to play a part?
Through the chair, I don't think the silt fencing will do much to hold back water. It's designed to hold back silt. But that was brought up with the NPCA, and we think that the alteration of the pond obviously has a significant impact on what has transpired.
Thank you. So we'll follow up with the MPCA as well. They've been radio silence up to this point, so I'm assuming that they're digging in. So we'll follow up with the MPCA. Again, James, you've been more than patient. I always say that it's your castle and you should be treated as such. So I'm really sorry you're going through all this, but we will try to get this wrapped up for you in no time. Thanks.
Thank you. Motion to receive, moved by Councillor Brenda Johnson, second by Councillor Collins. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. We're back into the public hearings now. 8.3 is an application to amend the Town of Dundas zoning bylaw number 358186, respecting the lands located at 574 Northcliffe Avenue, Dundas, PED 19132, Ward 13. Members of the public, in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, please be advised that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the City of Hamilton before Council makes a decision regarding the zoning bylaw amendment, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the City of Hamilton to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, or LPAT. And the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before LPAT unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So I'm just going to turn to the public. If you could indicate with your hand if you're here to speak to this item. Again, it's 574 Northcliffe Avenue, Dundas. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to ask then that we have, move on. Ryan, on down to make presentations, sir. Good morning.
Okay, good morning, Madam Chair, members of Planning Committee, and members of the public in attendance. My name is Ryan Ferrari. I'm the assigned planner to this application for a zoning bylaw amendment at 574 Northcliffe Avenue. This is the subject property. It's approximately 19 hectares in size. As you can see, it's bounded by the 403, sort of to the south, and Highway 6 to the north. To the east of the property here, there's also a residential neighborhood. It contains approximately 30 residential dwellings. So there are two buildings on this subject property. We call them Building A, Building B. The subject building to this proposal is actually Building B, which is shown here. Building A is a convent. It's known as the Sisters of the Precious Blood. It's a separate convent from the convent at Building B. Through this proposal, there are no changes to Building A whatsoever. So that brings us to Building B. Building B is an existing convent containing, which houses a convent of nuns called the Sisters of St. Joseph. So the Sisters of St. Joseph Convent was built in the 1950s. It's about 3 stories. It's configured for a convent, and there's also an accessory place of worship and also an accessory long-term care facility. It should be noted that this building contains about 20 nuns currently. In the 1950s, it was about 100. 12 of those nuns live in this building. 8 of them are in the long-term care facility right now. So before we go into, so the proposal is for the Columbia International College to move into this property and turn it into a dormitory intended for students. The way they intend to do this is to pass what is called a temporary use bylaw, which is a little bit different than the standard bylaw we pass at Planning Committee. Temporary use bylaw is authorized by the Planning Act. Council can pass a temporary use for a period of 3 years maximum. So the proposal is to permit a dormitory having an initial maximum capacity of 96 students for a maximum period of 3 years and only within Building B. There are no changes proposed to the outside of Building B, just interior construction. It should be noted that if a temporary use bylaw is passed on the property, it expires after 3 years and the use does not become legal nonconforming as a result. It's dead in the water after that. I'll get into this a little bit more, but there's also a holding provision proposed. So in addition to the initial 96 students with the temporary use bylaw, the applicant has also asked for a holding provision. The reason why the holding provision is there is for septic tank capacity. So the way it would work is the temporary use bylaw would allow the temporary use of 96 students for 3 years. The applicant has the option of expanding their septic system for a total of 138 students within that 3 years. Regardless, if they remove the holding provision or not, after 3 years, the bylaw would cease to be in force and effect. So I do want to talk a little bit now about the history of this neighborhood because I believe it is very relevant to this application. This property is located in what's known as the Pleasant View neighborhood. On the left there, you'll see the original survey. It was laid out in 1914. Okay. There were no planning approvals back then. It was laid out with a bunch of roads, lots. There are no services here. To the right is what you see today. A lot of those roads and lots have not been built. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because there's a very unique planning framework in this area. So between 1914 and 1950, various other subdivisions like this were laid out and were not fully built out. So just going back a little bit of history. So in 1973, the minister at the time passed a zoning order over these entire Pleasant View area, which froze development. The reason why they did this is because in 1978, a plan known as the Parkway Belt West Plan came into effect for the area. To this day, the Parkway Belt Plan from 1978 is still in effect for the lands, and we have to have regard to that when we make planning decisions on this property. In 1986, the town of Dundas amended their official plan to be in conformity with the Parkway Belt West Plan. And then 1988, due to public health concerns, because there still wasn't services in this area, the region of Hamilton Wentworth actually extended water to the area. So the subject property contains municipal water, but it's still on a septic system. Then in 1994, the town of Dundas adopted another official plan amendment for the area, which basically allowed certain residential development to occur. However, it was appealed to the Ontario Municipal Board at the time. This is a long hearing. I think it was approximately 3 weeks long. And basically, the outcome of the OMB hearing was that there was to be limited development in the Pleasant View neighborhood, which is why we haven't seen a lot of development in the area. Also of important note, the official plan that was put into effect by that 1995 OMB decision is still in effect today. And that is the official plan we have to use in order to make decisions on applications in the Pleasant View area. So it's the Dundas OP. Of note, Columbia International College has had a relationship with the Sisters of St. Joseph. In 2011 and 2013, they actually applied for minor variances and achieved minor variances to permit student dormitory within the existing Building B. That use doesn't exist anymore, and it's just a convent. And further, in 2013, the Niagara Escarpment Commission decided to add the Pleasant View area to their plan. So the reason why I go over this is because, in summary, the applicable plans are the Niagara Escarpment Plan, the Parkway Belt West Plan, and the old Dundas official plan and Hamilton Wentworth official plan. And here I'm just showing on the right is the Niagara Escarpment Plan designation. It's designated rural. And then the Parkway Belt West Plan is on the left. It's special complementary use area. So this is the actual subject property. This is the driveway looking towards the two buildings. As you can see on the left is 154 Northcliffe Avenue. That's the Sisters of the Precious Blood. Again, there are no changes proposed to this building. And again, there's the Sisters of the Precious Blood Monastery. This is following the driveway to the building. This is Building B. This is the convent. There's another photo of the convent. This is around the back of the building. The subject lands contains a lot of amenity space. There's a lot of grasses. Again, this is the back of the building. This is the existing long-term care ward. This is a photo further back, again, showing the amenity area on the property. There's also a lot of existing parking spots scattered sort of throughout the area. This is one of them. Okay, so just a little bit more on the proposal. I'm sorry for how blurry this site plan is. This is just showing the Building B and the overall site area. So for more detail on the proposal, so the Columbia International College, the proposal, it will house 96 students. The students will, my understanding is varying range from grade 9 to grade 12. So they're international students. They will be supervised. There will be security staff on site, house parents on site, as well as kitchen staff that kind of move in and out. The only permanent residents will be the students. Further, so for transportation, the students will be transported to and from the Columbia International College campus in Hamilton. This is the route that they will be taking, and so this would be the morning route, and then the afternoon would be the same route reversed. So the transportation is achieved by a total of 3 buses. Regardless if it's 96 students or 138 students, it's achieved by 3 buses. So as part of this proposal, staff circulated the Niagara Escarpment Commission. The Niagara Escarpment Commission came back to us with a staff report. It's noted as Appendix F to the report. The Niagara Escarpment Commission reviewed the proposal and have no objection to the proposal. Further, with regards to the septic system, so the applicant submitted a site servicing brief that demonstrated that the existing septic system could accommodate 96 students. When a septic system capacity is over 10,000 liters per day, the Ministry of Environment gets involved and an environmental compliance approval is issued. So it's a provincial approval. They have a provincial approval for 30,000 liters per day, and 96 students reflects the existing capacity of the septic system. This is why a holding provision is being placed on the subject property, because what the applicant has the option to do is they can go to the Ministry of Environment, they can apply for an expanded ECA approval, and then get 138 students. And finally, Conservation Halton reviewed an EIS in support of the proposal, and Conservation Halton have no comments on the environmental impact statement. They feel that there are no impacts to the environment. So finally, the applicant held an open house at the convent on April 30th. There were about 20 neighbors in attendance. The applicant made a presentation, but a summary of the comments that were made at the open house are as follows. The first one is traffic, increased traffic impact. So in support of the application, the applicant submitted a traffic brief to the Ministry of Transportation, as well as our transportation staff. It was their opinion that there are no adverse traffic impacts with this proposal. And of note, a building and land use permit from the Ministry of Transportation Ontario will be required to implement the proposal. Another one was natural heritage. So again, our own natural heritage staff reviewed an EIS and determined there are no impacts on the subject lands. There was a concern with regards to amenity. The subject property is isolated. So the Columbia International College is including amenities such as a snack bar. There will be, actually, I want to show. So approximately in this region, there's available space to put in a soccer field. To the south, there's an existing parking lot that they want to make a basketball court out of. Further, there are excursions planned on the weekday evenings where students have the option of going out to a movie or a mall or something of that nature. And finally was municipal water capacity. So this application was circulated to Public Works staff, and Public Works were satisfied that there were no water capacity issues. So in summary, the proposal has merit. It's consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the applicable provincial plans, the Parkway Belt West Plan and Niagara Escarpment Plan. The proposal complies with the Region of Hamilton Wentworth Plan and Dundas Official Plan. It should be noted that the use is temporary for a period of 3 years. Any further extension or change in use would require another zoning bylaw amendment application and another approval from Planning Committee. Further, the building is a registered heritage building, and the occupancy of the building is frankly dwindling. This proposal represents a good adaptive reuse of a heritage building. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate that. I have Councillor Partridge. You have questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And my ward actually borders just a little bit above this, but I can't speak on behalf of Councillor Vanderbeek, but this is a wonderful application. And Ryan, I thank you very much for the depth and the detail of the information that you've provided. I was on the Heritage Committee when indeed we did bring the heritage designation to this building, and the worry has always been over the years with this building as well as with the one that is in the border with Flamborough and Burlington up on Snake Road, that something would happen to it. It would deteriorate. So we designated it, and Columbia College, and I have spoken with them quite extensively, they have no issue whatsoever. In fact, they really love the idea that it is a heritage building and their intent to preserve it. But my question is, and perhaps I wasn't in the room at the time, so I do apologize, but why the temporary use? Is it because of the different plans that are impacting the development?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, the reason why this is a temporary use, the applicant does have plans to turn this into another use. However, currently staff don't have any applications brought forward at this point.
Okay.
It's just a temporary use.
All right, thank you. And no, I do appreciate that. Everything about this location is great for student housing, dormitory use. You've got the RBG, which is literally right across the Plains Road, which ties into the 403 highway. There were some concerns outlined in the application from some of the residents in terms of transportation, but you can see from what you presented that the buses will actually be going down the 403 into Hamilton as opposed to along Old York Road. So I don't think that will be an issue. So I'm fully supportive of this. The fact that there's 3 buses, there's certainly tons of amenity space on the property, but as well, certainly different locations that are surrounding it for the students to be able to keep busy, if you will. So I'm very, very supportive of this, and I encourage my colleagues to do the same. Thank you. And I'd be pleased to move it at the time.
Thank you. I'll come back to you, Councillor, and I'm going to also ask, there seeing no further speakers, would you like to move the receipt of Ryan's presentation? Moved by Councillor Partridge, seconded by Councillor Wilson. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ryan. And I'm just going to turn now, John Arians of IBI Group is in attendance. Come on down, John, and hopefully you're in support of the staff recommendation. Morning, John.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of committee, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to be here on behalf of both Columbia International College and the Sisters of St. Joseph's. I do have a brief PowerPoint presentation to share with you as well. You're all very familiar with Columbia International College. They've been in Hamilton now for over 40 years. In fact, this year we had the 40th anniversary. The mayor, Councillor Whitehead, and Councillor Farr were in attendance. They are an educational powerhouse in this municipality. They are Canada's largest private secondary school. 100% of their students qualify for university and post-secondary accommodation. They have partnerships with 10 universities. No other high school, private or public in Canada, can boast such an academic record. Their students in 2019 amassed $6.3 million in scholarship grants. They are an educational powerhouse in this municipality. The Sisters of St. Joseph are no stranger to Hamilton as well. They've been in this municipality for quite some time. They've been involved in healthcare, teaching. They've been involved in numerous social services over the years. And unfortunately, they no longer require this large facility, this large campus-type setting. And enter Columbia International College. They've had a relationship with the sisters for quite some time, as Mr. Ferrari indicated, and an offer to purchase has been started with. I do have some air photos of the property. I won't dwell on it. You're all very familiar with the site. Here are some site photographs and some additional air photos. Basically, from a planning status, we are in the Niagara Escarpment Plan. And we are designated escarpment rural and escarpment natural, but we are subject to your zoning bylaw, and that's why we are here dealing with the zoning. The zoning that we have on this property is very restrictive. It basically limits it to existing uses only. And as Ryan indicated, there were variance applications previously to accommodate students on this property. So as I said, the sisters and Columbia have had a long-term relationship. There is an offer to purchase. The offer to purchase is conditional only on the temporary use. So should council approve this bylaw and there be no appeals, Columbia will be closing on this property. Now, the long-term intent, as Mr. Ferrari referred to, is actually to create a school campus on this property, and it's primarily for their grade 12 students. So just picture all the grade 12s from Columbia International College going to school here. No longer any residential component, just purely the school. Now that requires a Niagara Escarpment Plan amendment, it requires a Dundas official plan amendment, and a further zoning bylaw. As you can appreciate the complexities of an application like that, particularly with the Niagara Escarpment, that's a minimum 2-year process. So what do we do with a building for 2 years? Obviously the sisters want to have a firm offer to purchase, they want to close, they want to move on. Columbia wants the same. So while we are pursuing the big picture planning, while we're dealing with the Niagara Escarpment and your Dundas official plan amendments, at least the building will have some occupancy should you approve this temporary use. So the long-term strategy is to allow the students as a temporary facility, knowing that the big picture game plan is going to take 2 years in the making. So the temporary use, we hope, will be 138 students. As Ryan indicated at one time, I believe there were 110 different suites within this building. Now, some of those suites are quite large and can accommodate 2 students. So while the septic system currently has capacity for 96, the building actually has capacity for 138. And that's why we've asked for the temporary use for the 96, give us what the system can accommodate today. As part of Columbia's ongoing improvements to the property, should we get a septic permit expansion, we can at least add more students into some of these additional spaces. Ryan also mentioned the traffic, and it's 3 buses in the morning, 3 buses at night. Not a significant amount of traffic at all for this temporary use. The building will have facilities, cafeteria, a little gift shop or tack shop, whatever, for buying convenience items. Most of these students do not even have international driver's licenses. They don't even have cars. So their traffic is very, very minimal. Security was a concern. Litter was a concern. And you know, Columbia really is going to use this building as an incentive. You know, they really think outside the box. So it's the students who excel who will be housed here. That their treat for being good students is to live in the mother house. So they're using it as a benefit. And it's a compatible use. It's really no different than the existing convent. We did have the open house, and as Ryan indicated, the key issue is traffic. We confirmed that the route will be from the 403 and not Old York. There are 3 intersections at play. Intersection 1 is at Northcliffe and Zellens Ave. These are the photos. It's a very level intersection, adequate sightlines. It's a stop for the buses, and there are no safety concerns with this intersection. The second one is at Newman and Zellens. Again, adequate sightlines, safety is an utmost concern, and there are no issues with this particular intersection. This is the intersection that's causing the problems. And I don't want to steal the thunder of the residents who are going to speak, but really their concern is not the temporary use, but the long-term use when there are potentially 1,000 students here. And then we have more buses, but those buses are going to be staggered over a 7 or an 8 hour period. It's not like a convoy of 20 buses coming, because the bus that drops off students for period 4 picks up those from periods 1, 2, and 3 who are finished for the day and takes them back. So it's going to be dispersed over a longer period. When we look at this particular intersection, York Road is of course very busy. It provides a ramp to basically a 400 series highway, and it's a stop condition at Newman Road. And sometimes it is difficult to pull onto York, particularly during the rush hour, but that's not when the school will be transporting kids. They do it after the morning rush and before the afternoon rush. So from a traffic standpoint, it's going to work. This is the sightlines from that intersection. And I just point out on the photograph looking south, you'll see there is a little dip in the road. And this was brought up at the public meeting. And while technically the dip will comply with the sightline requirements, we can make it better because traffic volumes are significant and school buses take a little bit longer to pull out onto traffic. So what we have recommended is there be some brush clearing and that we put up a flashing warning sign indicating that there will be buses turning. And that, in our respectful opinion, will deal with the one and only traffic issue. And it's primarily for the long-term use rather than the temporary use. So the short term will allow the student dormitory while we do that big picture planning. The long term, of course, is the Niagara Escarpment Plan process. There's ample opportunity for public input on those applications. We are in the midst of preparing all the technical support studies, environmental impact, species at risk, hydro-G, setbacks, slope stability, all these studies, servicing, traffic. They will be ready, hopefully, before the end of summer, and we hope to submit these applications later on the end of summer. And as I indicated, it's at least a 2-year time frame. So the temporary use allows Columbia to use the property while that big picture planning is underway. I do wish to thank Mr. Robichaud and planning staff for having this report before you today, because in a perfect world, Columbia would like to have the fall program start with students within this facility. So thank you to staff for bringing this forward. And as Ryan ended his slide show, I will do the same. This really is the perfect adaptive reuse. At public meetings, I joked about, this being a Harry Potter type of facility, and it really is. Just picture a grade 12 having a graduation ceremony in front of this wonderful building. It is a perfect opportunity to take this heritage resource, put a new tenant or new owner in the building, and ensure it's there for everyone to enjoy in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Councillor Partridge.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, John, for your presentation. I appreciate it. I just have one question. The long-term care facility that's currently there and the sisters that are being cared for there, what will happen to that?
So through the chair, Columbia is still investigating its ultimate plans for the property. There are so many meeting rooms and facilities there. It could become an office wing for them for administrative purposes. It could be a variety of different uses.
Yeah, sorry, I meant what's going to happen to the sisters?
Well, the sisters have actually secured space in a long-term care facility in the city of Burlington. Wonderful. And shortly after, if this gets approved, they will be moving. Their offices, their admin offices, and Mike McDonald is here, their CAO, will continue from this facility. And of course, the Sisters of Precious Blood will remain as well.
So again, that partnership continues. I just wanted to, I was sure that the sisters would be cared for and move to a good place, but I just appreciate you clarifying that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So the Sisters of Precious Blood, the monastery, which is a cloistered monastery, have they been involved with the discussions and they're aware of what's being proposed and there's no concerns there?
Through the chair, they've been fully aware. From day one, they're obviously going to get a new landlord. They attended our open house. They really had no concerns or issues, but they're fully aware of what's going on and are supportive.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, everyone. And with that, then, may I have a motion to receive presentation? Councillor Partridge, second by Councillor Danko. All in favor? Thank you. And now we're going to, is there anyone now, we have to go out to the public and invite the public wishing to speak to this issue. Please come down to the podium. And you can speak first if you want, and then enter your name, address, and phone number in the book afterwards. And please print clearly for our staff records. Thank you. You can pull the microphone down to you so it's easier.
Good morning to everyone.
And your name, just for committee's record.
My name is Joanne Spears with a double E. I live at 41 Atkinson Boulevard, Dundas, Ontario. And I have some opinions and comments to make on what has been presented today. And so I'd like to make an opening statement. I am very troubled by the fact that my street, Atkinson Boulevard, was left off the circulation list to receive pertinent information concerning the application by IBI, who represent Columbia International School. I realize, as per the Ontario Planning Act, that notice is only sent to property owners within 120 feet of the subject land. But all you have to do is look at a map of our small community, and you will see that we will be impacted by any of the decisions concerning our neighborhood. South of our overpass, there are 3 roads with homes. All of them are dead-end streets. And we all share the fact that there is only one way in and one way out. And Atkinson has 14 homes, Zellens has 9, and Northcliffe has 10. That's a total of 33 homes back there, with an approximate population of 72 residences. So we are very much, Atkinson Boulevard is very much a part of this that's going on, and we have been excluded. And you will even see on maps that they print that Atkinson Boulevard is always cut off as if we're not a part of that neighborhood. And that disturbs me greatly. Whether there's an act or not about 120 feet, I think it would be just common courtesy to be able to, be a part of this. So I called and spoke with Ryan Ferrari and asked verbally to be put on a circulation list on March 11th, 19. I wrote and I mailed a letter March 18th to Ryan Ferrari requesting to be put on the mailing list, and I called Ray once again on April 16th with the same request, and as of the April 30th meeting, I still hadn't received anything in the mail about any notices about meetings or anything. And so that night, April 30th, at the first meeting, I was assured by IBI and by John Ahrens that I would be put on the circulation list because I wrote in the book my name and address when I was at that meeting. There's a great breakdown going on because there was 2 meetings. There was a meeting on June 24th, and July 3rd, and I got no notice of them in the mail. And they're going to say that they put a public notice. There's a board now outside of the convent that has small printing on it and that. And because I was expecting that finally I was on the mailing list, that I wouldn't have to stop every day when I enter or exit my community and look at the small print on a bulletin board of when there was a meeting there. So that greatly disturbs me. So I also want to say that the impact on the traffic, I feel, has been, I don't know, lack of a better word, diminished or, you know, not perceived as going to be a problem as much as it will. I have lived there for 23 years. We have someone up there in the seats. Their family has been there 3 generations. There's other families that have been. These lots of lands were given to World War II vets in the late 40s and early 50s, and they built their homes there, 33, not all at once. And there are still families, like I have already mentioned, with 3 generations living there. Now, the impact on the traffic is by far our greatest concern, but there's also environmental issues. I wish that Arlene Vanderbeek was here because she was at the April 30th meeting, and she stood up and she told us that where we are living, those lands are the most protected in Ontario. And yet we have lots of wildlife around, and it's going to be an impact on them. So environment wasn't even brought up in the last, I did get this week, with a summary of all the details and how they're going to take care of all these problems. Environment was completely left out. So our concerns are impact on traffic. The congestion from a 4-way stop at York Road. It's not Old York, it's York Road. The other side of Highway 6 is Old York. So the congestion from Highway 4, 4-way stop, at York and Old Guelph Road that backs traffic up all the way sometimes to the 6 overpass, Highway 6 overpass. And that's right in front of Newman Road, our only entrance and exit. And there are 2 blind spots, not one dip, there are 2 blind spots in a row that you have to pull out a little further and make very sure, especially if you're not sitting in a truck, if you're in a car, that there's no one coming. And I'll tell you something right now. Yeah, and they're only meters like from Newman Road, eastbound. And speeding is a problem on our road out in front of Newman. It's a problem, constantly. And I don't know if you're aware of Old York Road, but it's very windy and has dips. It's very narrow. There are no shoulders there whatsoever. When bicycles, I don't know why they do it, it's so dangerous, ride on that road, they have nowhere to go. They have to be right on the roadway when they see cars coming or not. And you can't pass them because there's so many dips and turns in Old York. It's not in good shape. And I also wanted to bring up the fact that there is no public transit service going by our community whatsoever. And there's nothing within walking distance, nothing. We are almost like locked in there because, like the map showed, there is the Highway 403 south of the convent. On the left side, I thought it would be the east side, is Highway 6. And we have ravines, deep, huge ravines, over 8 stories, that surround the convent and our community. And there will never, ever be any way that public sewers can be brought into our neighborhood. It's all on septic. And for the last few years, there have been problems with the septic out the side. If you walk there and see, they're having issues with it. So Okay, I addressed the environmental, but there's open ditches and no sidewalks in our community. We do have municipal water, but we are concerned. It's not so much the temporary use. What's going to happen when there's 1,000 students there with 40 buses going in and out? They say they're going to stagger them. Does that mean our community is going to be constantly looking and listening and hearing those buses going in and out? That's like, this is just opening the door for them to be able to do this in 3 years. So, yeah, so this is, you know, just the beginning of that fact that this is what they ultimately want to do, is have it as a student resident. Can you imagine 1,000 students there all day long? The amount of sewage and flushing and the water, I don't believe that, you know, that it's something that we won't be impacted by. I was the one that originally wrote the letter to Ray, and I got signatures. Another thing that's been misstated is that it says in their latest mailing that there were 14 signatures. There were 24 signatures. And, you know, there's been a few other issues in there that, you know, I don't agree with at all. But traffic is a huge one. So that's all I have at this time to say about that. But they're undermining the fact about the traffic. I'm telling you, it's a mess out there. And that York Road is a mess. And those are legitimate blind spots that we face every day going in and out of there. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next speaker, is there someone else wishing to come out and speak to this item? This is your opportunity. Once I close off to the floor, you will not have an opportunity to put your comments forward. You go ahead and enter your name, address, and phone number there. Thank you. Yeah, you go ahead. You're okay.
Good morning. I'm Nancy McKeel. I live.
You can pull the microphone now.
Good morning. I'm Nancy McKeel. I live on Northcliffe, 37 Northcliffe Avenue. I've lived at this residence for 15 years, which is at the low end of the scale compared to my neighbors. First, I have a question, and then I would like to explain why I'm against this application. In addition to the total capacity of 138 students, what is the number of staff and visitors the property is expecting to accommodate on a daily basis? And I ask this question because in our meeting on April, we were told that there would be a robust staffing of the facility for the students, including security, teachers, etc. And I'm just curious about those numbers and if they've been taken into consideration regarding the septic system. That can only accommodate 96, pardon me.
No, present your,
Oh,
we'll make sure counselors ask the question.
okay, pardon me. Now I'd like to explain why I'm against this application. And I know it does seem idyllic that this would be a very nice reuse situation of the property. Sounds very nice, 3 buses at the beginning of the day, 3 buses at the end of the day. The main concern is the long-term plan of 1,000 student school. That equates, when you take the equation of 3 buses for 138 students, to 45 buses a day. 45 buses a day into this neighborhood is, in my opinion, not conducive with the rural and natural description that we heard earlier. Also, the way these buses are managed is not the same as municipal buses that pull up, pick up a couple passengers, and carry on. There's staging of the buses that will happen. These buses will run, and they'll be staged, waiting for students, full buses of students to full capacity of students to load the bus. This means virtually for the most part of the day, there will be buses that are running in front of the building. So just as a point of clarification regarding the traffic issue, yes, we are concerned about the traffic issue from a safety component. If any of you know that York Road area, at certain times of the day when there's traffic issues on Highway 6, it's a nightmare. If anyone's experienced that, they know what I'm talking about. Just add an additional 45 buses a day to that experience. But addition to the safety concerns we have, it's not only safety for the buses, it's the life experience of the neighborhood. To have that many buses going through this very rural and natural area every day is a major concern. And with buses being staggered or buses going in the morning and the afternoon, we're going to have the same experience, a constant stream of buses going through this very small, very rural, very natural area. That concludes my comments.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And last time, anyone wishing to come on down, this is your opportunity. And did you enter your name, address, and phone number, please? Sorry. Thank you, Madam Clerk. I saw you. I saw you panicking.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Janet Nanscoville. I live at number 10 Zellens Road. I have lived in this area for 33 years. When we purchased out there, we purchased this area because it was rural, because it was quiet. It was just a perfect place for us to raise our family. You'll have to excuse me because I'm a little bit nervous about talking publicly.
Don't worry, we don't bite.
Okay? Well, I think our worst nightmare is just about to happen. We knew that over the years there was going to be a decline in sisters, of the Sisters of St. Joseph's and the Sisters of the Precious Blood. So we kept thinking something was going to happen somewhere. Maybe there'll be more sisters coming in. That didn't happen. And then Columbia College had approached them, and they were there 7 years ago, rented one of the floors there, had a temporary use for their students. We experienced a lot of traffic going in and out. This was taxis mostly. We were used to darts. We were used to delivery trucks for the sisters. We were used to some visitors for the sisters. The increase in the taxis, we were not used to. The increase in the speed, we were not used to. So we've asked for a stop sign. This neighborhood has only ever asked for 3 things in 70 years that it's been there. A stop sign, snow removal when we can get it, and a bridge that would take us safely out of the area because the MTO had decided on making a few different changes. So here we are. Now we have a proposal from Columbia College. They would like to have the 90-plus students there for 3 years. Well, we've been guaranteed that they would have a security. They would not be able to leave the property. They would have the mother, maybe a mother looking after the property. That didn't happen 7 years ago. The amount of garbage, the amount of taxis going in and out, we don't have any other way in our neighborhood, okay? When it comes to the traffic, I'm going to tell Dundas this right now. You have 2 other axes out of Dundas if you want to get to Highway 5, Highway 6. There are 2 other ways to do it. But everybody in Dundas is trying to take that one route down York Road, fastest way they can get to Highway 6 or the 403, and it's right by us. It's a mess. Now, we've been told that they took a traffic study last month. I go in and out of that neighborhood every single day, and I'm looking at people. I didn't see any traffic study. Normally, those are wires that are across your roads. Gives you an accurate count of your traffic. I got 2 different stories last week. I got one that said we might have somebody with a clicker. We had another one who said they might have had somebody sitting at the side. Who did you have? I didn't see anybody. I made a suggestion in a letter there because I want the city of Hamilton and the Columbia College in the neighborhood to get together on this matter. Certainly is a traffic matter. First of all, that becomes the city of Hamilton. You need to sit down and renegotiate what this is doing to this neighborhood. A number of suggestions were to put a flashing light that was on the last letter, a flashing yellow light that will allow everybody to know that there is a bus exiting the route. We have flashing yellow lights on Highway 6 coming down to Clapis and Cut. See how well that worked for us. That all got changed. Ministry of Transportation said that wasn't working. Changed it. We have one down by Sovereign. Nobody pays attention to that. Believe me, no one is going to pay attention to a flashing light. What they want to do is they speed like you would not believe. The wheels barely touch the ground. They have no idea at all that Newman is off to the right. They come clean through. It's like taking your life into your own hands. I made a suggestion here to all of the councillors. Put a light there that will only change when people are exiting Newman. This way it'll allow traffic to flow quicker. I'm not going to say it's not going to back up from Highway 6 because that becomes the MTO's problem. Also, a flashing light over by Guelph Road, Old Guelph Road, and York Road. Again, it'll access people that are coming from those 2 roads. It'll only change when they're there. They're not the busiest areas. York Road is the busiest. It would be nice to see that York Road would be regraded. But I think the city of Hamilton is going to come up and tell us that they don't have the money. So that choice becomes theirs. As regards occupying the Sisters of St. Joseph's building, we need occupants in there. But as regards the 1,000 students that are going to be taught there and 40 buses will be coming right smack in front of my house. I'm at the bottom of the bridge that goes over the railroad. Try and get out of that driveway. Whether they are staggered or not, it is not going to work. The bottom line is no area in Hamilton, Ancaster, Waterdown, Dundas is going to put up with this. There has to be further studies. There has to be better meetings. And I'm going to be honest with you. I don't see this as Columbia College getting totally what they want. And I don't see my neighborhood getting totally what they want. But there has to be further studies. There has to be a compromise. As regards the traffic study, I asked them to come out. I asked them to tell me when they were doing it, because you need to do the traffic study from the day after Labor Day till the day before the kids were out of school. As regards the notice that I just got, and believe me, I'm very lucky to have gotten a notice because I didn't get the 2 previous notices that were supposed to be issued to the homes that are with 150 meters. I did not get them. I don't know what the excuse is. Maybe it was the mail. Seems to me that my neighbor and I are the ones who are having to go out and notify all the neighbors. Now, we're a small community. We don't have a lot of clout, but we do not deserve to be. We don't deserve the fact that we're not getting notification. We do deserve to be in a safe area, and I'm not talking when I talk about just us being safe, but if the sisters are going to sell up and it is going to be to Columbia College, we have to be concerned with their safety too. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your time.
You, Councillor Farr, you have a question of the presenter?
Yeah, thank you. And it's sort of some comments, some themes that you've shared, and you did a very good job on your presentation. Not a bad public speaker at all, through you, Chair. Have you, just on the traffic, and not just a theme that you shared, but other delegates, have you appealed or talked to or called the Ministry of Transportation? I mean, having, the MTO is obviously an approval body, and they've said they've looked at the traffic brief on this file and said that they had no concern. So have you spoken to anybody from the province?
Transportation doesn't need to have a concern there, sir, because that is classed as municipal. Right when it hits York Road, that is up to the municipality. Highway 6, once it starts to congest up Highway 6, it becomes their problem. He said if the congestion is coming from York Road and Dundas, it is Dundas's problem, in this case Hamilton's, because everybody is accessing out of the Dundas-Hamilton area.
Okay, I'm just going by the report that says that the staff note that the applicant submitted a traffic impact brief that was reviewed by both the MTO and transportation planning staff with the city. Both MTO and staff were satisfied that the existing road conditions could accommodate for anticipated traffic generated from the site. The other thing, you're again back to the traffic, because we do hear that a lot here. When anything is new, any plan that is different from existing facilities is brought to us, and that's what this committee is all about. It's change, and change it can be uncomfortable for some, and it's perfectly understandable. But the issues you're talking about with speed, people not abiding by current traffic regulations or indicators or signs or stop signs or lights, or we need to have lights or not have lights, it's not exclusive to your area. It is a problem across the city, I suspect, across Ontario and across Canada, and it is an enforcement issue. It sounds like daily you would be benefited by greater enforcement, and that's something obviously you could work with your counselor on. But what I do want you to understand and hopefully appreciate is we have hundreds of Columbia College students in the Corps. I've been down here about 9 years, and I can tell you they do nothing but add to a great vibe, a growing vibe, a vibrancy. They're very polite. I have not come across any Columbia College student, young or a little older, because they obviously have grades, I think, 1 right through to high school, that haven't been anything but upstanding citizens and really add a lot of value to this area. And I know this is downtown, and you're talking about a rural area as you define it, but through you, Chair, it's not the students themselves. I haven't heard any of the delegates say the students themselves are a problem, but you just alluded to a little bit of, I think, 7 years ago, some garbage. Is that your only issue with the students themselves?
We don't have a problem with the students themselves.
Mm-hmm.
What we're saying to you is that we're having a problem with the increase in traffic and the 40 buses that's proposed, although John is talking about having them staggered.
Right.
40 buses over 8 hours, less than 8 hours. The other thing that has been mentioned in my letter that I've only just received is that the buses will be running not on the rush hours. Now, please explain to me, I do not understand what someone's rush hour is, but the buses will not be running from 7:40, they will be running from 7:45 to 8:45. That is a rush hour. That is a rush hour. We have a rush hour that starts on York Road and it continues on until about 9:30 in the morning, 9:30, 10 o'clock. Then we have the rush hour again that starts at around 2:30 in the afternoon. I'm not sure which rush hour they're talking about, but
Let's focus on the one word, rush. You're talking, and other delegates are talking about it. It's very
it's
congested.
bumper to bumper.
Okay, so when we have peak period traffic, it generally is bumper to bumper anywhere in the city. York Street is not an exception. So therefore, it's slower, correct? When it's rush hour and it's bumper to bumper through you? Is York different? Is your rush hour fast-moving traffic or slow-moving through you, Chair?
It's bumper to bumper. I mean, you
Slow.
can't get onto the highway because it is so far queued up. It is past.
I've seen it. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
And I understand what you're saying about the rest of the city and the other problem, but the bottom line is the rest of the city isn't my problem.
I understand, and that's why you're here. That's a good answer.
I don't
just
mean,
wanted
I
to
don't
get it
mean
on
to
the
be
record.
rude to the rest of the city, but the bottom line
My
is.
final question is this. It's real simple.
Okay.
We have, and you are 30 plus years, you say, or longer?
I have been there 33 glorious years.
Phenomenal. It is a beautiful nook, no doubt. I've been since I was a teenager, just driving through or riding through on an occasion. So it really is a wonderful neighborhood, and that is a standout facility. And the nuns, I can't think of a better use than a nunnery for that facility. However, we all know they're down to 12 in a dormitory or a facility that accommodates about 100 or whatever it is. And you have already said in your delegation, they're not coming back. So what is, in your opinion, and maybe it's the opinion of your neighbors that you're obviously talking to, what is the optimum use if it's not going to be
Personally,
this
many
facility?
years ago, sorry.
In your opinion?
Personally, in my opinion, many years ago, and even today, is that we have people that are waiting to come out of St. Joseph's Hospital that have no places to go into retirement homes, nursing homes. It was a fully furnished, they had a fully furnished multi-million-dollar infirmary there. That would have been, it still would have been an issue with the traffic. There's no two ways about it. It still would have been somewhat of an issue with the traffic. But the thing is, we're not really having so much of a problem with the students of Columbia College being there. We're asking the city to work with Columbia College, to work with this neighborhood, to start regulating that traffic, to make the visibility better for all of us. And when I'm talking about better for all of us, I am also talking for the students that are going to be at Columbia College. Because the bottom line is, you don't want to know what will happen if they get hit coming out of that area.
Well, to that end, and this isn't a question, but a comment based on yours and other delegations, I've obviously with the Columbia College students, the hundreds that are in the core, they're throughout the city, they're on the mountain, they're in the West End, quite obviously in Ward 1. Security of their students, the safety of their students. I've been to some open houses and so forth there. I've talked to Mr. Chan, his son, and others. It's of paramount, and they are doing an incredible job. You can imagine they run a school with international students, and they're charged with the safety of those students, the security and the safety of their students. It's beyond anything I've seen. So I think they would take such an initiative seriously, understanding and appreciating Councillor Vanderbeek's concern with those issues elsewhere in Dundas. There may be, I think, opportunities to make improvements, and those improvements can be based, not completely, but certainly be supported and based on some of the suggestions you've made here today and some of the suggestions your neighbors and yourself could make in working collaboratively in the future. But I thank you very much for your delegation, and totally understand and appreciate the issues that you and the other delegates have presented. We do hear them regularly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So with that, and don't forget to please enter your name, address, and phone number. Are there any further residents here wishing to speak to this item? Seeing none, Councillor Partridge, you want to first motion to receive and close off to the floor? How would that be? We'll do it all together, Madam Clerk? Okay. Motion to receive all three presentations and close off the floor. Moved by Councillor Partridge, second by Councillor Danko. All in favor? Hang on. It's a recorded vote, no? Nope, thank you. Okay, Councillor, and I'm going to turn to Councillor Partridge on the recommendations.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Nancy did ask a question when she came down to delegate, so I'm going to ask staff through you to Ryan. Ryan, 138 students. Was the capacity for teachers and additional staff security taken into consideration as well when you were looking at the different septic sewer systems and water capacity? Could you just unpack that for me, please?
So through the chair to the councillor, yes, it was. According to the applicant, what they would be proposing is in addition to the students, there would be a total of 5 house parents scheduled in morning and evening shifts.
Five house
That
parents?
is correct. And that might necessarily 5 at the same time. It could be 3 and then 2 at night. Similarly, security, 2 security staff. Kitchen staff for the evenings.
Right.
So that would be 6. And finally, Sisters of St. Joseph administrative staff, there would be 6.
Okay, so 6 staff for the sisters, and then 6 for the kitchen, you said, 2 for security, and 5 for the house moms, right?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, all right. And in terms of the capacity, the water capacity and sewage, all of that was factored in?
Yes, through the chair. So as I alluded to before, the applicant submitted a servicing brief for the septic system.
Okay.
It did take into account the students and the staff.
All right, so when we look at 138 students, although it's 96 students, the capacity is for 138, but it's 96 students that we're talking about. And with the additional, it would be 19, so 96 plus 19. So it's still under the capacity of what the building itself can hold. Is that an accurate statement?
That's correct. Through the chair, it's correct.
All right. And what I can say to the residents is, you know, I hear you loud and clear. I travel York Road. I grew up in Dundas in Grand Vista Gardens. I'm now the counselor for Waterdown and Carlisle all the way up to Guelph. And traffic is significant everywhere. But York Road, it is bad. Dundas Street, it's bad. And Parkside Drive, et cetera, et cetera. But what I will commit to is I will meet with your counselor and I will encourage that through the partnership with Columbia College, that they look at addressing these issues in terms of the traffic as well, okay? But I thank you very much. You all did wonderfully well. I know you said you were a little bit nervous, but you all did extremely well, so I appreciate that. And if you can come back to me, I'll move the report.
Councillor Clark.
So, Madam Chair, the only question I have is with regards to the issue on York and the traffic. So is there clear direction in terms of how traffic is going to be dealing with the access of the buses coming out and what we're going to be doing to be protecting both the buses as well as the citizens who are using York?
Yeah, through the chair. We asked for a traffic brief, which identified the general patterns of staff and buses. We don't envision major changes that are required at this point for this particular stage of the application. When it moves to the next stage, we will also ask for additional mitigation.
Okay, so the study that you've completed, you're indicating that it doesn't warrant lights or anything like that at that intersection?
Not at this time, no.
What's the volume of traffic that would warrant such?
You're talking at the, it depends on the cross traffic. So sorry, I don't have the volumes that would trigger a signal, but at this point we're not requesting a signal.
I have concerns about what I've heard. I don't know about anyone else around the table, but I know that at Highland Road in my ward, it's nothing compared to York, but we had a school bus hit and the risk is significant. And so we do everything we can to try to mitigate those risks. So if that is a risk, then it would be prudent that we step up and actually do something to mitigate the risk and prevent it from happening.
Yeah. Through the staff, we will review again. It's also a risk if you implement an unwarranted signal. The ministry hasn't identified concerns with this location as well.
Does the ministry have control over the intersection?
This is within the permit control area of the ministry.
So then, shouldn't the council be writing to the ministry asking that the light be put there, if it's within their control?
Through the chair, we will again look at whether this meets the warrant for a signal, and if it does, write the ministry.
So I'm just suggesting that perhaps we might do that as a resolution so that we can track the outcome. I'll leave it to the ward councillor and the chair, but I don't think we should let that drop. I think that's a risk.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you to Councillor Clark for raising that. Not too long ago, just for the residents' information, in my ward, I enjoy McMaster University, and we also have in excess of 10 buses cutting through Ward 1 from Hillfield 3 times or more than that a day, down the Queen Street Hill and along Aberdeen. I was very fortunate that this council helped support some measures that would come forward in recognition of the congestion and the safety implications of not just, of course, those buses, but all traffic and the risk it presents to the pedestrians, particularly the children. So I am sympathetic to the bus traffic, and I think if there is something that we can do following the lead of the ward councillors to support them in their efforts, I'd be more than prepared to do that because I am very sympathetic to that.
Okay, thank you. And just before we do go, Councillor Partridge, I'm going to ask as well that you move to receive the written submission that we have also 8-3 from Jeanette Nance-Cavell. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Partridge, second by Councillor Clark. All in favor? And now Councillor Partridge on the recommendation before us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Chad Collins. For 8.3, we'll move to approve the application as indicated in the report. Thank you.
The submissions did not affect the decision?
Right. The submissions did not affect the decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. You have that. All in favor of electronic vote, please? And that carries. Madam, yes, go ahead, Councillor Partridge. That carries just for the residents. Go ahead.
Yeah, and thank you. And I will add, I do appreciate Councillor Clark and Councillor Wilson raising the issue of the light. I'm very familiar with the area. There are some challenges there, but I'll certainly work with Councillor Vanderbeek and myself and traffic to, again, to look at that area. Traffic counts, yes, but I think it's more important that we work with the MTO and just see what exactly can we do. Because I travel that road all the time, and it is quite significant, the traffic issue there. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to go on to item 6.4. Amber, my apologies, and thank you for being patient. Amber Lindsay of Urban Solutions respecting a request to apply for minor variance at 100 Hamilton Street North, Flamborough. This was deferred from the June meeting. Come on down, Amber. You're aware of a motion coming forward? Thank you.
I have good morning in my notes, but I guess we've transitioned into the PM now, so
sorry.
Good afternoon, members of Planning Committee, staff, and members of the public. My name is Amber Lindsay. I'm a planner with Urban Solutions here on behalf of the owners of 100 Hamilton Street North in Waterdown, which is also the subject of item 11.1 on today's agenda. To start, I'd like to thank committee for approving my request to delegate today, as well as Councillor Partridge and development planning staff for their time spent on this matter, specifically Trudy Kennedy and Elena Baldessara. Some of you will recall that I delegated on this same item at the June 18th meeting, and it was the committee's decision to defer this item to today's agenda. So for this reason, I'll try to keep my presentation as concise as possible. As I mentioned at the last Planning Committee meeting, the subject lands received a site-specific zoning bylaw amendment approval in 2017 to develop an apartment building. The current owner then acquired the lands in the summer of 2018 after this approval. Since this time, a revised site plan application has been submitted to the city to construct a retirement residence, which is a permitted use in the site-specific zone. Through the site plan process, it was determined that approval of a minor variance application would be required to ensure that the proposal conforms with the applicable zoning bylaw and allow for the issuance of conditional site plan approval. The first variance that's required is to reduce the loading requirement from 4 spaces to 1 space. And the second variance is to allow for partial kitchens within the individual retirement dwelling units, whereas the Flamborough zoning bylaw does not permit partial kitchens in retirement units. As shown in this image, a partial kitchen in this case includes a sink, a fridge, and a microwave. The variances are required as at the time of the rezoning, the intent was to develop an apartment building, so consideration for the variances related to loading and the partial kitchens was not considered. Because we are within 2 years of the anniversary of the passing of the site-specific bylaw, which was in September of 2017, we do require council direction to allow staff to accept our minor variance application per section 45(1.3) of the Planning Act, which was introduced through the Building Better Communities and Watersheds Act in 2017. Section 45, subsection 1.4 of the Planning Act grants council the authority to exempt specific applications from this restriction. Therefore, my request today is that committee provide the appropriate direction to allow our application for minor variance. That concludes my delegation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions of committee.
Thank you, Amber. I don't see anyone having any questions, so I think you've done very well covering that off. And so I thank you. May I have a motion then to receive Amber's presentation? Councillor Partridge, second by Councillor Clark. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. And we're just going to carry on the agenda then. We're down to the discussion items now. 10.1 is to amend the business licensing bylaw to include a new license category for tree cutting services as Schedule 14 citywide. Any questions or comments? If I could just hand the chair to Councillor Farr real quick. I want to thank Luis and Dawn for everything that's been done. Ken, to the staff, all the staff that's been involved, tremendous job. And I thank you for hearing my concerns and addressing them through the amended document. I'm sure that I haven't had a chance to follow up the tree business in my ward, but I know that they will be pleased with what's come forward. So thank you for that. And I know I asked Luis this morning, I called on a couple of issues, and I appreciate again the straightforward, honest answers, and certainly again it'll work well with the businesses. So thank you for that. I'll take the chair back. So we have that item before us, the motion to approve the recommendations, moved by Councillor Brenda Johnson, second by Councillor Wilson. All in favor? Electronic vote. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And moving on now, we're going into motions. 11.1 is the authorization for 100 Hamilton Street, GP Inc. to apply for variance to a bylaw for lands located at 100 Hamilton Street, North Flamborough. Councillor Partridge. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and I do appreciate the committee giving us a little bit of extra time to work with staff, as they did want to craft the motion a little bit differently. And if I can get a seconder for it. Thank you, Councillor Johnson, Brenda Johnson. So authorization for 100 Hamilton Street, GP Inc., to apply for variances to a bylaw for lands located at 100 Hamilton Street North. And do you want me to read the whole thing or just the, yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, we've been through this, yeah, well, we've been through it 2 meetings at this point, so. Therefore, be it resolved that 100 Hamilton Street, GP Inc. be authorized to apply for variances to a bylaw for lands located at 100 Hamilton Street North. And if I could just speak to it briefly. I will say I'm hugely supportive of this development. I have been from day one when it was previous owners that were bringing it forward. And, our community of Waterdown is desperately in need of seniors' residences, seniors' housing, and, whether it be a retirement home or a co-op or whatever. So I'm very, very pleased to see this come forward sooner rather than later. I'd like to get this development certainly in the ground, but very, very pleased to be able to move this forward for the minor variances. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, all in favor? Recorded vote, but thank you. Thank you, everyone. And now we're going on to notices of motion. Councillor Partridge, you again, sorry, Councillor Farr, you have something, or I have? Yes, I have a notice of 12-1 before us with Councillor Partridge, so I'll turn to Councillor Partridge if that's okay? Please do. Yeah, so Councillor Partridge, go ahead.
Yes, this is rather time sensitive, so I would like to waive the rules. Councillor Farr, thank you.
Yeah, I figured.
For waiving the rules?
Go ahead, Councillor.
Okay, everybody has to vote.
Oh.
Come on.
Let's go. Sorry.
All right, there you go.
Okay, now you have the motion. Do you want this to now therefore, or?
Yeah, no, I'll put it in now if I may. So moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Brenda Johnson for 9 Main Street North, Municipal Registry of Property of Cultural Value or Interest. And whereas the owner of the lands located at 9 Main Street North, Waterdown, recently sold the property and closed the Village Fish and Chip Restaurant. Whereas 9 Main Street North, Waterdown is listed on the city's heritage inventory but is not currently recognized through registration or protected through designation under the Ontario Heritage Act. And whereas a preliminary evaluation of cultural heritage value or interest conducted as part of the Waterdown Village Built Heritage Inventory found that 9 Main Street North, Waterdown meets criteria specified in Ontario Regulation 9/06. And I'll go straight to the therefore be it resolved, if I may. Therefore be it resolved. A, that 9 Main Street North, Waterdown be added to the city's Municipal Heritage Registry of Property of Cultural Heritage Value or Interest as a non-designated property. And B, that council directs staff to add 9 Main Street North, Waterdown to staff's designation work plan and be assigned high priority for heritage designation. And I thank you very much if you'll support this.
Favor? Sorry, no, he's just on, yeah, you'll have to, can you do the vote still? Yeah, okay, thank you. He's on for the next one. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to 12-2, which is the Liquor License Act Auxiliary Zone changes. Councillor Farr, you have a notice wishing to move it up to a motion, seconded by Councillor Partridge, I'm assuming. All in favor? Electronic vote. Just speeding things up. Excellent.
Whereas are self-explanatory, that therefore be resolved that the mayor requests the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario review and update the regulations under the Liquor License Act, allowing patrons to move across auxiliary zones within a licensed premise to include any thresholds between licensed outdoor patios and the licensed establishment. And if I can very briefly speak to it, this is somewhat time sensitive in that it's really subject to, at least in my ward, super crawl. We have, as you know, a wonderful new concept in this city where we allow parking stall spaces to become patios in the summer. Hugely popular and well enforced and well regulated by our very accommodating and friendly staff. That said, at Super Crawl, with the current rules, and they may not change, but we're just asking that they take a look at it at the AGCO, we have to close off those patios and hence close off those sidewalks during a very, very busy pedestrian 3 days. And so that makes it difficult for the hundreds of thousands of people to sort of maneuver around these facilities. And what we've learned is in other jurisdictions across North America, it's not uncommon to see that you can carry your plastic cup of beer, as an example, from inside the establishment across the sidewalk to the patio you're trying to get at. So that's all we're trying to do here is ask the mayor to request the Alcohol Gaming Commission of Ontario to review this regulation and maybe perhaps update it. Some of the folks we've talked to at the AGCO seem willing, ready, and able, but ultimately that needs to be formalized, and hopefully that's something that can be done ahead of the upcoming September Supercrawl. Thank you.
Appreciate the clarification. Counselor, can I ask who your seconder is for the record? Brad Collins, thank you. Counselor Brad Clark to this motion.
So the concern that I have, and I understand the desire and the intention, is that ostensibly what this would create in Supercrawl, for example, is one large beer garden, the entire length of the street. Because you can't control and there's no enforcement in terms of they're taking their beer from one facility to another facility across the road. They could go anywhere on the street. And that creates just a huge problem. And I think that's why the rules haven't changed over the years. So unless we're interested in having a giant beer garden, which I'm not on for, I don't see how that would work. Yeah, I figured as much. That would be the solution, right? Inadvertently, I give a solution again. Anyways, I have serious concerns, so I can't support it, but I appreciate the intent.
Okay, and with that, we have a mover and a seconder. Counselor Farr to it.
It's a valid point. I'm not going to amend, but, and it's certainly something we discussed in the past, but if I could, through you to staff, explain how we would, that would be prevented, it's a very valid concern, and I can understand, and especially given that I've pressed and waived the rules, there may not be enough clarity in my motion that offers a solution or an answer to what has been raised. So through you to Jason, how that is being addressed in our communications.
Yeah, so through the chair, and I'll let Ken elaborate as well, the motion is restricted to the auxiliary zone. So the auxiliary zone is a defined area. What we have seen is that if you are a server, you can take a beer from inside the restaurant across the sidewalk to the patron on the patio, but as a patron, you cannot cross that auxiliary zone. So that's what the motion, as I understand, is looking to address, not the entirety of an entire street. It'd be specific to the auxiliary zone, but I can ask Ken to elaborate.
And through the chair, I believe it would be covered under the Liquor License Act accordingly if you are not within that auxiliary zone or outside of the direct area of where the bar is and the patio is, you would be drinking in a public place. And so obviously you'd be exposed to charges under the Liquor License Act.
Appreciate that. Counselor Clark, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So hypothetically, I purchase a beer. I'm now out on the street walking down, and police come up to me or AGCO come up to me and they're going to enforce it. And I say, I'm going right into that patio right there. And I paid cash for my beer. Prove that I'm not breaking the law.
Through the chair, I think it'd be a direct route that you'd be looking at. I mean, if you're 10
Came out
feet
that
off.
door and went into that door.
Yeah, traditionally, it's the patios are directly outside of the restaurant. So if they're 2 feet on either side, you're outside the licensed area. And I'd be glad to take something like that to court.
Okay, good luck with that. I'm not.
Yeah, and I got the vision when I was reading this, that it was a big beer garden that I could just hop from restaurant to restaurant. So, yeah, no, I'm getting that now. Can you do me a favor? Just explain auxiliary to me. So I have a restaurant. I have a patio sitting right outside that door. My waitresses and waiters are going in and out that door from the patio to the restaurant. What is it you're asking for? If I've got that right. So the patio's basically connected to but on the sidewalk, on this side of the sidewalk. Am I right? Am I getting this?
Through the chair, no, it's when you have the patio outside of, and there's a sidewalk in between, so there's public space in between. If you know the program that we've been running for the last couple of years where there's patios on parking spots. And so technically, the minute you breach the doorway of the restaurant and walk over to that patio, that's public space, and that would be prohibited.
Okay, thank you. So on James Street, there's a couple of parking spots. They put it like the Salt Lick, because it's a fabulous place. You've got a patio there, but the waiter and waitresses have to go across the sidewalk to get to that outdoor patio, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, so again, and I'm going to come back to the same scenario that Councillor Clark did. I'm now leaving the patio to go into the restaurant. I changed my mind. I'm going to walk down the street.
Through the chair, you'd be liable to an offense under the Liquor License Act at that point.
Thank you. All right. I'm good with that. Thanks.
Councillor Farr?
Sorry, I didn't.
Okay, you're all right?
I'm all good. Thank you.
Thank you. Then on your motion, all in favor? Clarification, I'm okay. I understand. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Item 13, Mr. Thorne, do you have any updates and information for committee? And I hope you're going to mention about PED talks tomorrow night.
Yes, through the chair, I will. So the department is hosting our next PED talk tomorrow at the Discovery Center. It gets started at 5 o'clock. The topic is on Passive House. So committee may recall we've had a couple of applications over the past year or two that have come forward that have been being built to the Passive House standard. Indwell has had a couple of projects. City Housing Hamilton has been looking at a couple of projects that are seeking to achieve Passive House standard. It's a low energy, low GHG standard of building. So we thought, given the number of projects we're seeing in Hamilton that are looking to do this, we have the president of Passive House Canada coming in tomorrow to talk about what the standard is, how it works, what some of the benefits can be for property owners, for cities, and how it can be part of a city's response to climate change. So I think we're somewhere up over 100 of people are coming out tomorrow. There may be a few spots still left, though, if anybody else wants to join us. Thank you.
Thank you, and I will be for a short while because I do have another event in Stony Creek, but I don't think I've missed one yet. They are always excellent, so encourage anyone that hasn't registered yet, please go out because they are great. So with that, just motion to receive Jason's update, moved by Councillor Clark, second by Councillor Brenda Johnson, all in favor. Sorry, Councillor Clark, you had something.
So just a question to staff, since we're on general information. So when I was in my private life, I represented the Beasley Neighborhood Association with regards to two properties on John and Houston, and we mediated a resolution between Greenwind, I believe was the name of the company, and the Beasley Neighborhood Association and the tenants to everyone's satisfaction. A part of that resolution was a request that was supported by BNA as well as Greenwind that the City of Hamilton develop family-friendly housing policy. The motion was subsequently passed at council, and I've not seen anything since that time, and time is flying past, so I'm trying to get an understanding of exactly where we are on that policy and when will it be coming forward to council for consideration.
So through the chair, I'll let Steve speak a little bit to the residential zoning, because we've been looking at that as an opportunity to bring forward some of these considerations on a broader basis. We did include within the downtown secondary plan some what I would consider policy incentives for family-sized housing, in that if you do a unit of 3 or more bedrooms, you qualify for a reduced parking standard, which was seen as a way of incentivizing the incorporation of family-sized units into multi-residential buildings. And that was already put in place with the downtown secondary plan. Steve, if could provide a little bit of an update on the residential zoning bylaw.
Through you, Madam Chairman, we have done some background research on family-friendly housing and the supportive guidelines associated with that at best practice review. And the intent is to bring that forward with as part of the mid-rise and high-rise residential zoning. That'll be coming forward probably in Q4 of this year, some background information to committee in terms of then having public consultation on those elements relating to family-friendly housing, pet-friendly housing, as well as updates some of the guidelines associated with mid and high-rise development for public consultation and public feedback on those provisions.
So to clarify, if I may, Madam Chair, is the consultation on the family-friendly housing policy or guidelines happening in advance of consideration of the new zoning bylaw, or are you trying to do it concurrently?
Through you, Madam Chairman, what we are seeking and doing is bringing forward a series of essentially what I call white papers or consultation documents to this committee, and seeking committee's authorization to then have public consultation on those white papers and report back on what we hear. There's a variety of you may recall earlier this year we brought forward the white paper on residential care facilities.
Yes.
So that was the first of many papers that we will be bringing forward to this committee for authorization then to proceed on the consultation. Right now, staff are working on a white paper background discussion document on secondary suites and accessory apartments, as well as another document relating to the parking standards for the residential zoning project.
And we are also working on a sort of a bigger white paper around some housing issues, both an update and consultation on our condominium conversion policies. We are looking at rental housing protection through a municipal act bylaw, as well as then also encouraging and promoting family-friendly housing through as part of that housing discussion. Like I said, the intent is for this committee to receive the documents, and if they're okay with the documents, then we will have public consultation on those documents.
So to be clear, the family-friendly housing white paper is a separate paper, or is it buried in another report?
Through you, Madam Chairman, it'll probably be into the broader housing discussion paper as opposed to a standalone document, just in terms of looking at some of those opportunities and best practices as to what other municipalities are doing and moving forward, as opposed to making it either an official plan or a zoning bylaw requirement. My recollection is in most municipalities, it's encourage and promote as opposed to require the larger bedroom units to be provided in new development.
Yeah, I believe most of them are basically guidelines, but I think ideally it would be helpful if that was a white paper onto its own so that we can have that discussion, because there is pressure mounting in the communities asking exactly what we are going to be doing. And we're still here now almost a year and a half later. We don't have that document, so the sooner the better. Thank you.
Thank you. And just before we move on, just under general, because the Councillor Clark made me think, do we, and if staff can answer, if not, they can look it up and send it to me later. I'm having an issue with a home that's been converted, I believe, into a group home in Ward 10, and I'm not sure, do they have to be licensed as a group home, and are we made aware of these addresses?
Madam Chair, I would have to look at the location, so if I can speak with you about that location afterwards, and I can determine what type of investigation has already been done on the property.
Appreciate, and I will follow up with you, Robert. Thank you so much for that. And with no further comments or queries on general information, I'm going to move on to private and confidential. We have the closed session minutes, moved by Councillor Collins, second by Councillor Farr, and that they remain confidential. All in favor? Recorded vote, please, and thank you. And Councillor Partridge left, thank you. That carries. Thank you, everyone. May I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councillor Danko, second by Councillor Brenda Johnson. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you.